Okay, Vice Chair, I think we're all set here on this end. Whenever you'd like to start.
Carlos, are we going to start with the chair first, Mr. Connor?
Is he running the meeting from Zoom? I thought the Vice Chair was running it from here. I apologize.
That's all right. I didn't have a chance to talk with you. If he could do the intro and then hand over.
I understand now. I apologize. I was not aware. Okay, one moment. Let me do that. All right, Chair, please.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We're ready to, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Flagler County Planning Board, August 11, 2020. And the first order of business is a pledge of allegiance. So please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Here.
I can't hear her.
Here. Here. Here.
And I'm here. So we've got two items on the agenda tonight. Both of them are actually three items, but they're quasi-judicial processes. Some of our participants in the audience and applicants are on Zoom conference. I just want to make everybody aware that Zoom conferencing is like being at the meeting. But we need to minimize the distractions. There can't be talking, background noise, interference with the meeting. If you just want to watch, tune into the TV station. If you want to be in the meeting, act like you're in the meeting. And for those that are present, no booing, no cheering, no clapping. This is a quasi-judicial process and we want it to stay clean. So we have a clean record going forward, both for the applicant and the people that are in opposition. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn the gavel over to Mr. Lombardo, who is present and has eyes and ears on the meeting. So Mr. Lombardo, would you take it over from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with application 3222. This is a quasi-judicial application. Sign variance request for multiple freestanding signs not located at the main entrance. At this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I think maybe we'll start with the quasi-judicial disclosures. I apologize, sir.
Sorry about that. Does anyone have anything to disclose on this application? No, we'll go ahead and hand it over to staff. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, this is follows the wall sign variance that we had for the same property the last meeting. This is the monument sign variance. We were hoping to have them on the same agenda. They were separated. They are different applicants. The project we had before was specific to the Planet Fitness. This is for the entirety of the complex. Ordinarily, you'd see this come in at the time of site plan. They had still been in some discussions with the city of Palm Coast when we've had the site plan come through. And since then, we've had the annexation agreement. They do anticipate, as I've mentioned in the staff report, annexation to occur. What they've done is they've provided a sign plan now, monument signage only, that's consistent with the city's regulations, and that then requires them to come in for a variance application for our regulations. 3 variances, in fact. The First one being the multiple freestanding signs not located at the main entrance. That second one, freestanding sign exceeding the maximum sign area allowed in our code. And then the third, to reduce the minimum setback for a freestanding sign from the property line from 20 feet to 10 feet when located within 50 feet of a driveway or right-of-way. And all of these are at Airport Commons. The project's displayed here, the southeast corner of the intersection of what's now known as Aviation Drive and State Road 100. And we've got the section provided also in your packet of the relevant portions of our code that we're looking for the relief from. Again, here's the land use, the zoning district designation, flood zone, and then that site plan itself that shows the monument signage. You'll have the two that are located along 100, and then the one smaller sign that's back along Aviation Drive. And so we have that square footage I've mentioned in the staff report. Let's see if I can come back to those. So we've got the analysis in the staff report of the distinction. We've got 36 square feet based on the 72 square foot sign areas allowed where a building has frontage on multiple streets. The analysis submitted 24 square feet of copy area for the secondary sign, being not then requiring a variance. That's our monument sign at the tail end. This is what these are going to look like. And so this is that first one. I think this is the primary entrance. This is the one that's on the site plan. If you look there at the middle, there's a black line that runs north to south. That is this sign. And then this next sign is the one that's at the corner of Aviation Drive itself, at Aviation and 100 on the site plan. This shows up as that black line that's just inside of the sidewalk on the left-hand side of the drawing, the west side of the drawing. And then at the bottom of this drawing, you'll see the monument sign on Aviation Drive, more for identification purposes. That is this final sign that has the displayed words Airport Commons. Provided options within your staff report, and not uncommon with what we've done previously. Approval as submitted would have the variances that have been requested. And so you have those specifically listed. Second monument sign along the parcel's principal frontage. The freestanding sign exceeding the monument sign area allowed a 24 square foot variance between the proposed 96 square foot sign area and the LDC's 72 square foot maximum. And then the third being the reduction in the minimum setback for a freestanding sign from property line from 20 feet to 10 feet when the signage is located within 50 feet of a driveway or right-of-way. And that would then allow these three signs totaling 182 square feet of sign copy area for Airport Commons. That second option I have assumes then that for some reason planning board doesn't feel that the variances for all three of those sign variances have been met and would approve one or two of those, but not all three, and would deny then one or two of those. And you'd have findings then would go along with those. Probably the findings that we typically have as challenging that criteria one or two are not met. One being that there's something unique about the property. Two being that this was not it was in fact an owner-created hardship would be what you would determine to deny the variance. Option three would be denial on the basis that all of the criteria, or all three of the variances cannot be met, and the criteria again have not been met. And option four is to table. With that, I'll close, be prepared for any questions. I do believe we also have the applicant, both Mr. Jay Livingston is available on behalf of the applicant via Zoom, and then also Mr. Charlie Faulkner, if you have any questions. They're not necessarily prepared to make a presentation, but if you have any questions for them, they are available. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mingle. So should we go ahead and call the applicant? They don't have a presentation, so are we just going to go ahead and go to public comment? Or
Carlos, do you see anyone raising their hand?
Yes, Charlie and Jay Livingston are both in chat and unmuted, ready to speak if they would like to.
Gentlemen, I think now's your chance. Mr. Livingston and Mr. Faulkner.
Oh, Jay's in here twice. I do apologize. Hang on, I think I allowed the wrong one here. Hang on one second. Mr. Livingston, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go right ahead.
Well, I think Adam's staff report laid out the reasons for the variance. The only comment I wanted to make in regards to the options that were given is that there are actually two important points that need to be remembered. I think that you all considered these already in the last month's planning board when you considered the variance for Planet Fitness, but in this particular situation, there is a very unique circumstance, and that is that the property is going to be annexed into the city of Palm Coast. Annexation has to occur per the pre-annexation agreement before the end of the year, and the triggering event for that annexation is issuance of the CO, which we anticipate to have around the beginning of next month. So the annexation will go before City Council sometime in September, is what's anticipated right now based upon the construction schedule. This is not a situation where the applicant chose to be in the city and chose to process this through the county in some kind of voluntary manner. What actually happened is that the applicant attempted to develop in the county, intended to remain in the county, and the county and the applicant received a letter from the city of Palm Coast attorney threatening litigation. In the process of avoiding litigation, we entered into a pre-annexation agreement that created the system where we can complete our development in the county before the annexation occurred. There's nothing voluntary about it other than voluntarily avoiding litigation. I think that needs to be kept in mind. And then, in terms of, so it's not a self-created hardship. It's a very unique circumstance. It's not going to establish any precedent. And most importantly, it's a temporary variance because very soon we're going to annex into the city and then we'll be in conformity. We took great care to make sure the sign design and the layout was consistent with the city code. We're going to be in the city very soon. And it just seems that it would be unnecessary to require compliance with the county when at no fault of the applicant, we will very soon be annexing into the city. So those are the only comments that I have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mingle?
Mr. Vice Chair, I did neglect to mention for the benefit of everyone that there were no public comments that we received before this meeting as far as any affected party through the notification process.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if Mr. Faulkner has any comments. I didn't mean to speak over him if he was ready. Carlos, did you have Mr. Faulkner? Is he raised his hand?
He's there. He's not. He's able to talk if he chooses to.
Okay.
Here, I'll. There you go.
We just go ahead and open it up to public comment.
Oh, it looks like he's on the phone as well. He may have called in on a phone number without his name on it. Let me just turn all of these phone numbers on.
Hang on, Carlos. Try
Okay.
the one ending in 47 if there's one displayed that way.
I see. Very good. Charlie, are you there? Are you talking into your phone?
Take your phone off mute.
No, we're still not. We see you talking, but we don't.
I had the exact same thing happen today, so we're bearing with you.
Yeah. Zoom is a lot of fun.
I think he's saying he's good to go.
Yeah, he's waving.
Yes.
All right, great. So let's go ahead and open the floor up to public comment. If anyone has any comments, feel free to step up to the podium now. State your name, where you're from. All right. No one? Guess there's no rebuttal for the applicant, so we'll go straight to board discussion. Any questions, comments, or motions that we have?
I have a comment or a question. Adam,
Angela?
I didn't necessarily see it clearly in here, but So is this the same condition we had before? Is this application going to mirror the Palm Coast Code? If it's approved, this would be the Palm Coast Code?
Yes, sir. To my understanding and my review of the code, that is correct. This is, your variance is approving the Palm Coast sign regulations.
Okay, the only question I actually had was for the middle sign. The fact that they're, yeah, you can go back to the site plan, it's better. The fact that they're moving it closer to the road, has that been looked at for any sort of site problems with seeing the traffic? Has anyone made any comment about that one way or the other in TRC or anything?
We did review it to the Palm Coast regulation, and what they've displayed is consistent. Palm Coast measures to the center line, which may be a better measure. And then also, and you see it here on this, the inbound turn lane, the edge of pavement, you've got a fairly large area that's there. And in fact, I'm pretty confident to say that the stop bar, while I don't think I see it located here on the site, it's going to be north of the sign location, so that I think what Palm Coast has put in with their site triangle, their vision triangle measured from the center line, this meets it.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have, it's been moved, the second, that the application be approved. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to state for the record that I do find hardship that's not caused by the applicant. The play out of the water wars after this guy bought his property and the ensuing threat of the lawsuit more recently establishes, I think, a criteria that is a situation that's not caused by the applicant and therefore a hardship that meets our code. And just for clarification, is the motion for the approval of the application as filed or one of the other alternatives recommended by Adam?
As filed.
Okay.
All right, if there's no new added discussions, we should be ready to vote. All those in favor of the application being approved, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So we have I approve as well, aye, 5 to 5. Oh, forgot Mr. O'Connor, sorry about that, 6. Votes to approve, application 3222. Moving on to our next application. All right, this is application 3209. This is a quasi-judicial application. Do we have anything to disclose on this application here? I do have some disclosure. I did meet with the applicant and their attorney briefly last week, and we did discuss the project. It was purely informative on my part to find out more about this project that was going to be taking place. Is my disclosure on that.
I have a disclosure as well. I represent the landowner that owns the property just south of the subject parcel, the 35-acre parcel just south between Polo Club and the subject parcel. He received the letters that were mailed out as an adjacent property owner. He called me to inquire about what it was about. We had a brief discussion about the project, but he did not express to me any strong feelings one way or the other. Secondarily, I received on a phone call with Mr. Cemento. He inquired as to whether we could talk about the project, and I advised him that, on advice of counsel, that was ill-advised, and he agreed not to have the discussion.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to keep moving along here. Application 3209, request for modification of a PUD site development plan on the PUD district of the Hammock Beach River Club, PUD located south of State Road 100, east of the line east and west of John Anderson Highway. At this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I did provide for you today on the dais a couple of items that have been submitted. I also sent them to you by email, so Mr. Connor should have those to refer to. The first packet was Mr. Tanner's submittal to us, and then our response letter dated yesterday, Mr. Tanner's packet submitted on Friday, and then today, the revised letter from the City of Flagler Beach regarding the utilities. And so sent both of those items to you, and again, the planning board members here have them. Mr. Connor can refer to them separately via email. And this is the subject property. This item is relative to the revision of the PUD site development plan. And so that makes several assumptions, and I'll move forward with this in just a few minutes. Future land use designations, agriculture and timberlands and conservation being the predominant land use designation. City of Flagler Beach designations that are there that are adjacent to the property to the north, low density residential, some medium density residential, and then the other public facilities, the sewer plant for the city being there. Our PUD designation, along with some agricultural, rural residential, it's mixed in on our side, and then remembering this goes up to that north portion there across from Colbert. You see the commercial that's there, kind of adjoining some of that area that's here, part of this PUD. And this PUD, in fact, also has that commercial frontage along 100. And then the reciprocal, the side there on Flagler Beach that matches up to their future land use designations, their residential, SFR, R1, again, their utility plant. So you see those designations here. Flood zone is a consideration, and this is the new flood map overlay that comes in over that, remembering that we build in flood zones maybe too often here. Our regulations have a 1-foot freeboard requirement for any building that occurs within the flood hazard area. And so you see zones AE, no floodways within the limits of this project. And floodway being that red hatched area that you see, that's the Bealo Creek down and to your left, the west portion. We have designations here, AE and Zone X for this property. And again, that gives you the lay of the land. And then the soils map, and a very colorful one at that. And each one of these then having some considerations, the more upland areas there, having different characteristics of soils. Wanted to include this in the packet because I think that's a consideration also for those who want to see this kind of information. It has some definite meaning. And then finally, the wetlands, and wetland probably not being much of a surprise to folks. This is based on available data through the National Wetlands Inventory and follows general depressional areas that were on the property historically, and so you have those for reference. Also, for disclosure, the planning board did have a full set of topographic survey information. It's included within your packet, a lot of detail with that. And so I think that matches up pretty close to what you see here. Here's the part where I wanted to hit back over to. And so in the progression of what happened with this project, and again, this is Adam's 20-second history, which is going to take more than 20 seconds, but there was a progression of the project, a submittal by the previous developer, and for a larger project. That submittal then was denied, and then what came forward was a 2005 PUD for 453 dwelling units, along with some commercial entitlement. That 2005 PUD ordinance was approved, 2005-22, I think was the ordinance number. And then at some later point in 2006, the site plan followed, and that's what I have here on the graphic. I think I've included it in our FTP site, and that shows development as the previous developer had intended. And then based on this 2006 approval, They moved forward with a plat and platted the land in quick succession, began sales after a bond was posted, which is allowed by the Land Development Code in Article 4. A developer can post a performance bond and move forward with the final plat without infrastructure in place, and then sell lots. And what had happened here, if you can imagine, the downturn happened. You had folks who had bought these properties and then came to the county and said, okay, I'm now ready to do something with my property. I'm now ready to build. I don't have any infrastructure. County, I need you to call the performance bonds and require the developer to either build the infrastructure or for the county to become the developer and assume that risk, pull the performance bonds and start building. It was a position we had never been in before. We did not ultimately pursue that. The developer had, over a number of years, acquired what, not surprisingly, was the intercoastal frontage lots that were sold. Some, as I'm recalling, and I'm probably going to get them wrong, I think at one point it was as many as 4 dozen, I think was what had been sold. We came back and acquired those back, had the unity of title back to the lands, and then vacated that plat in 2012. With the exception of the lands that you see here at the bottom of this plan, the proposed public land B, that was our fire station site, the public land C, which was the boat ramp site, what we call public land D, which was the set aside, the 1,000+ acres to the left and off of this that's labeled here with that division line, Graham Swamp and Bulow Creek, that was that most sensitive conservation area, the headwaters of Bulow Creek. And so those lands were provided to the county, and those were not part of the vacation that ultimately occurred. The land and the project then sat as it had with water management district permits, with land development permits, have been the subject of some discussions over the years as we were wondering what next steps would occur. A CDD had been formed back in 06, 07, and that then I believe had continued to meet, had some activity on all those, but no further specific action until now. Mr. Belshey and his group, Palm Coast Intercoastal, had come in and proceeded with an application. Prior to this one, we had some discussions back and forth. A letter was issued, and this is the path. Mr. Tanner, they're not hearing anything you're saying, if you don't mind heading to the podium. So.
I'd rather Mr. Mingle complete his presentation.
I was trying to talk about history, but I guess I'm not.
I didn't mean to.
Mr. Tanner.
I just want to reserve this and let, if it would be more orderly, let him finish his presentation.
I
That's the
think
reason
that'd be
didn't
better.
speak earlier.
I think that'd be much better. If you could take a seat, Mr. Tanner, and let Mr. Mingle complete his
I
presentation.
just wanted to make certain we'd reserved the objection, and
You're definitely going to have your time to speak.
Thank you,
Mr. Mingle,
Vice
go ahead,
Chair.
continue first, please.
Thank you, sir.
So I'll skip the site plan part, I guess, but here's the site plan from 2006. And then here's where we're differing now. And so 2020 comes forward, and you'll see the building setbacks are identical. I provided those within your packet. And so those are listed in Ordinance 2005-22. The 2020 plan, the 2005 text, your building heights, and one of the items that had been discussed, the 6-story multifamily residential, that was actually in the 2005 plan also, and those are again in the 2020. And then the multiple pages to the site plan itself. And the distinction here, I think, boils down to 3 parts. That you have that 2005 plan that had some 220 units on its east side. Back to this graphic here. And that those were what was ultimately platted. And so we had the 220, and now we're looking for that 300 and change. I've got that in the staff report, don't remember it right now. Not important for me to say it because it's in the staff report. So we have a difference. So your site plan difference, number 1, is you have more stuff on the east side than what you had in 2006. Then, if you'll notice, this part here in the center, and I can't bring your attention to it other than to say that it's, just offset to the right, the line that's running north to south. And I'll read that because I don't know if everybody can see it. I don't think anybody can see it. But there's a note here that says John Anderson Highway overpass with underpass for Hammock Beach. Hammock Beach is this project. There was not a crossing, a connection, a intersection at John Anderson. Point number two, where this is different, is that now there is. And so you go to the plan today, you now have an intended intersection, in fact, 2 project driveways that are coming onto John Anderson. The third item that was discussed, and part of the machinations we had and some of the steps we went through, golf course. The golf course is provided in the 2005 agreement. We're thinking there's still an expectation the golf course will be there. I think we've had some satisfaction of those comments with what the applicant has depicted in the site plan application. But that was, I'll say safely, an earlier distinction. Now that, to me, they've demonstrated their intent to provide that golf course. You do have some number of holes here, and then we expect that continuation to happen on the west side. Part of what I think you'll hear the applicant talk about, I'm not, one of the questions I think that we'd had before, what about the west side? There are still some negotiations, we understand, on the west side and on acquisition by others. That doesn't mean that it's not part of the plan, because it is part of your plan. It is shown here. And so you do have that golf course continuation that's there, but you'll hear that mentioned by the applicant and weigh that then for what you need to. And the final point, I think, in the distinction that's here, and really you heard it mentioned on the previous item, the water wars. And so the distinction we have from what we had before was that the prior project was going to have its own package plan. County was going to be in that business. Since then, we've settled that. We've gone a step further. We now have Flagler Beach agreeing to provide those services within our service area. And so we've entered into that interlocal. You've had that updated letter from the city. And so to me, that's that distinction. I've stretched it in the staff report. I don't remember mentioning golf course. I've added that here, whether that's something that's germane for your discussion or not. But I think that those issues are those issues, that you have 200-ish and change versus 300-ish and change. Now, as the difference on the east side, again, your overall number, 435, has not changed. You have that grade separated crossing that you didn't have, that you had before. Now you don't have that. Now you have the intersection that's happening, 2 driveways. And then now you have Flagler Beach committed to provide that infrastructure. And so those, to me, are boiling down to everything else. I think those are the issues. Those are the differences. That's a distinction that's here. Otherwise, your minimum lot sizes, your setbacks, all that stuff is identical to the 2005 agreement. So to me, that's the crux of your issue that you have before you tonight. With that, I'll close, await any questions or comments, submit my report for the record, and I think I did pretty good at the 15 minutes. Thank you for your attention, Mr. Vice Chair and planning board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. At this time, we'll open it up to our applicant to make their presentation.
Good evening, Board. My name is Michael Schimento, and I represent the applicant. This has been a long project, particularly over the last 14 months, and as you know, it's shrunk considerably in size, and it is consistent with the existing PUD. I don't want to badger the point with Adam that we disagree on some things, but I do think it's very critical to your analysis tonight. And words and definitions are very important. So you all here tonight are under the code to determine whether the plan that was submitted, the PUD site plan, is consistent with the PUD concept plan. The PUD site plan that you have here today is consistent with the PUD concept plan, 2 different words. So I won't go back with the history, but it is important to understand that in 2012, as noted in your application, in your staff report, that the Plat was vacated. The Plat was vacated, and if you read your staff report, Adam correctly identifies and quotes the Plat vacation that says, Any future development on the subject property must be consistent with the PUD development agreement for the Hammock Beach Club. It doesn't say that it has to be consistent with the old plan that we talked about. It says it has to be consistent with the PUD, and in the PUD, Exhibit 2 is the PUD concept plan. Very important that we get there. We are here to kind of help the community. We've had some TRC meetings, and I think everybody's kind of getting an understanding of what this project is. There's been discussions about whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The PUD was found in 2005 and continues to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So suggestions that it's not is not true. Those appeals have passed. Again, when you pass a PUD, you have to deem it to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the commission in 2005 was. I put in there also, what is important is that we have this conceptual site development plan, which is attached to the PUD as Exhibit 2. And that's what you're here to look at. The plan that we're proposing is it consistent with the PUD and the conceptual site development plan Exhibit 2. There's also been some comments in the community about that this thing has expired. And I think Adam and I both agree, and does the city or the county attorney, that the PUD is still in effect and it is not expired. And so we can remove those objections from some of the community that may have needed some clarity. So again, the two different plans, approved conceptual site plan. We've put out in the audience the approved conceptual site plan that is attached to the PUD. What this did is it divided the 2,000 acres into three areas for development, or really 2 areas for development. The first area that you see, which is hashed in gray on your screens, that's the 1,000 acres that was negotiated with the property owner as environmentally sensitive lands, headwaters of the creek, and those were all given already to the county. So we don't own those, but that was all part of the original 2,000-acre development. That left about 800 and something acres to be developed. Also, Adam properly identified that we had given a fire station site, a mosquito control district site, and there were another one in there. So after that was done, we need to determine whether the plan that we're proposing is consistent with this conceptual site development plan. Let me go back in here. You might be able to see, it's a very difficult drawing. You can identify up in the top corner, or right in the middle, it says commercial multifamily, okay? And then throughout the rest of the drawing, you see single-family attached, single-family detached golf course. Does everybody see that? Is this on their screen, Adam? Okay, so you may be able to blow it up. So what the PUD did is it divided the property into 3 zones. The conservation, the 1,000 acres that we gave to the city or the county, the commercial multifamily district that we'll get into in just a moment, and the single-family attached, single-family detached for golf course. So those are the 3 areas, and if you read the PUD, it specifically says and defines 3 areas of development. I thought this was important because I don't think people understood the magnitude of this project back in 2005 and what the county and the developer did. They took 2,000 acres and everything in red was given to the county and is now under conservation. And I think it's part of some future parks and recreation things. So anything that's not in red is all that's left to be developed, okay? So there you have it. So now we have 2 zones in the PUD that we can develop. One is the commercial, permitted commercial development, just in that yellow area. And in that, the PUD says that we can do 230,000 plus square feet of commercial and or retail multifamily residential use and ancillary amenities. That portion of the property is not being planned out right now. That's probably for the future. So that leaves us with the balance of the property in blue, which is the residential golf community. So this is where all the homes we're planning to be developed. Again, this is the plan in the PUD which you judge our concept plan against. Is it consistent with this plan? In the permitted residential golf course, the PUD says it may be developed as a maximum of 453 residential units with supporting amenities and 100,000 square feet of commercial specialty retail. There's a little more definition in there on what limitations there are. So now we have our 3 zones defined. We have our area that we gave to the county in red, 1,000 acres. We have the yellow for commercial. And we have what's here today is the residential golf community section. So that's where we're at. So now we have this area development, which we are putting forth is phase one, we'll call it phase one, on the east side of the road for the 350-something units. Now, here's the overall plan. I think Adam showed it, and as it relates to the area that's developed. So as you can see, the commercial on the top is not planned, but all the residential and the golf course is still in the same place. So there's nothing inconsistent with this plan, which is our proposed site plan. There's nothing inconsistent with the plan that is in the PUD, which is this. Nothing has been identified as inconsistent. Now, there are technical issues that we have to discuss when we get to the plat, such as elevations of road, stormwater pond sizes, setbacks, and things like that. But we're just here, the first application is to say, is this plan consistent with the PUD concept plan? Here's the plat that we can talk about shortly later. And then here is the plan, you know, kind of an artistic drawing of what it will look like from the aerial view overlay. So that's all we're here today to ask you for on this, is to determine whether that site plan is consistent with the PUD concept plan. Now, this is where Adam and I don't even say we disagree, I want to be clear with you all. So in 2006, the PUD was approved with that concept plan that just showed the three areas. Later in that time, again, at that point, came to you with a PUD site plan, which is what we're here. Ours is just different than theirs. So your code says that once you have a PUD approved, then the next step is to come back with a PUD site plan, which is what we have today. Again, did that, and they platted it. Going back to what Adam told you when they vacated the plat, he specifically cites the development order to vacate the plat and says any future development on the subject property must be consistent with the PUD development agreement. So again, that's all we are. That plan, I argue to you today, and I don't know what Adam would say, is not even binding on anybody. It was a plan that was done 8 years ago that has no effect, is not binding on anybody, and is not even consistent. In fact, it's arguable that it was abandoned with the plat that was abandoned. So when you go through the staff report, there is some suggestion that that plan, the 2006 plan, is different than our plan, as he said. And he said to you that there were 300 units on, or 225 units on the east side, and now there's 335. We argue that that isn't even relevant because, again, that plan was abandoned. And I also remind Adam and Ms. Revels, who and I had a conversation some time ago, is that there's nothing in the PUD, that says you have to have a certain number of units on the east side or the west side. In fact, the argument that we had, not the argument, the debate that we had is, can you put all 453 units on the east side? And I think the concept was both agreed to by both that, yeah, we can put it on. There's nothing that limits it. So there's nothing that limits how many units can go on the east side or the west side. And in addition to that, there's nothing that limits or dictates how many golf holes have to be on one side. We could have 1 and 9, or 17, 17 and 1, or some combination. The PUD is that flexible. And in fact, the PUD even goes on to say that you may develop a golf course. It's very flexible. And we can go back to the minutes in 2005 or 6 when the county commission approved that. So again, we're not comparing this plan, our proposed plan, to the GIN plan. We're comparing this plan to be determined is it consistent with this general concept plan, which says put your commercial in the yellow, put your residential and golf course in the blue, and give us the conservation areas. I don't know of anybody at staff that has objected that says our plan is inconsistent with the PUD plan. So that's what we're asking for, is to approve the concept plan. We can get into some of the details after the community has some comments. I think we have both our engineers here, our traffic engineer and Parker Mitchenberg, our site development engineer that can talk about bugs, bunnies, trees, flood zones, and soils and that type of stuff. So I just ask you to keep that in mind. It was very important to understand the nuance here, because it is very complex and it is kind of heated in the past, and people were using different terms. And in fact, it was so complex that the county, up until probably March, was looking at the wrong plan when they were doing their original staff analysis, or I should say one of your attorney's office was. They were looking at the GIN plan thinking that that is the plan that is binding, and it's not. It's this plan, Okay? So we're here to answer any questions that you have. Again, I don't know that there's anything on the record by staff or any of the professionals that would suggest that our proposed plan is inconsistent with the PUD plan that you have in front of you today. So I'll just leave you with a pretty picture on the board, and we'll be back and answer any questions that you may have. Okay, thank you. Unless you have some now. Okay.
Thank you. All right, this time we're going to go ahead and open the floor up to public comment. Remind everybody, do we have the clock? 3
Yes.
minutes?
Yes, sir, I think, yes, sir. Hang on just a second.
3 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes for anyone representing a group. When you step up, please state your name, where you're from.
Roberta Paletta, I'm with Preserve Flagler Beach in Bulow Creek. I'm from Halifax Plantation. I'm here with Sally Arnoff. She's a co-presenter with me. We have a different viewpoint. I think I'll get to the key of that at the end when we draw our conclusion. And I think we're, okay.
Thank you all for
Okay.
doing good with our process. Thank you.
Not a problem. Okay, enough. Okay, we have an objective here tonight, and excuse me for pulling the mask down, just for clarity's sake. The objective is to introduce an indisputable argument that the developer, to reject this developer's request to grant them the quote-unquote cherry-picked entitlements of the 2005 PUD based on what has been submitted. Preserve Flagler Beach, Bulow Creek does not dispute the developer's right to build. We want to make that very clear. We are not saying, let's preserve the bugs, bunnies, and the turtles and whoever else is residing there from Mother Nature. Rather, we argue that the developer should submit a new PUD application because several of their proposed design elements contravene the original PUD in terms of road egress, density, and proposed number and location of residential lots. There are other reasons as well. Existing rules, land use map, and municipal codes need to be followed rather than establishing a precedent to exempt at will. We consider the proposed PUD application to be non-compliant with the 2005 PUD, despite the applicant's emphasis on supposed flexibility. For example, there's a reason why they desperately want this application approved under the 2005 PUD, and that is because in July of 2011, Flagler County adopted a new comprehensive plan, which, quote, among other things prohibits increases, that's our italics, in density within the coastal high hazard area and special flood hazard area, both of which are applicable to the garden proposal. And that's based on a letter that Mr. Mengel sent to the developer of October 2019. The Growth Management Department used this updated plat to reject the October 2019 PUD application. And that hasn't changed. Those rules haven't changed. The applicant proposed in their October preliminary plat to place 335 residential lots on the east side of John Anderson when the 2005 PUD was slated for only 220. That's a major increase in density, again, in a high hazard flood area. The Growth Management Department used this update to reject the October 2019 PUD application. Here we go. And I'm going to let my coworker here.
And I'm
continue.
Sally Arnoff. I was getting the disinfectant for the flipper when we were introduced. Appreciate the time. When Mr. Chimento made an emphatic statement about the difference in words and terminology, we also feel the same way, that the 2005 PUD gave entitlements, and those entitlements apply. If you're going to be using the 2005 PUD, the entitlements are what are there, regardless of the other rhetoric that you heard earlier this evening. And what I did in a comparison, I took the original 2005 PUD and compared it to just the last 2 sketch plans that have been presented. And it is true that the 1,000 acres were donated, and it was not donated by the current property owner, the we. The we that donated and made the agreement with the county in order to get the 2005 PUD approved, that was GIN. All of that was given and on the books way before the current owner has it. So what the current owner has and bought were the entitlements from the 2005 PUD. The difference you'll see in the one sketch, March the 4th, they had 825 acres. That is what Mr. Cimento showed you as the middle strip and the east side. That's a total of 824. The 453 entitled residential lots were spread throughout the whole 824 acres. Today, what they want us to look at is a plan that was presented 8 days after the March 4th, and it has 271 acres, and that's where they want the 335 homes. Now, granted,
Ma'am, your 5 minutes are up.
I'll speed it up, and we have a few more slides.
No, next.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. We hadn't discussed with you, Mr. Vice Chair, that we're comfortable with more time if the board could waive the requirement, at least for this portion of their presentation, if the board is willing to.
Are we okay with that? Mr. Langello,
Well,
Mr. Goodman?
My only problem would be as long as it stays on a reasonable time, because
Yeah.
there's still a lot of people here tonight, and
We understand these
you know,
speakers.
we did hold the applicant and even yourself to a certain amount of time, so we just need to actually speed it up and
I
get
will.
your
So
point
we're
out.
going to go 3 more minutes. Sound good?
Good at
Can you do
speeding
it?
up.
All right.
Yes, we started with the 2005, and there were 4 pillars. It was finally approved, and then in 2008, that was when the 1,000 acres were transferred over. Then come May of 2018, that was when Sunbelt purchased the property and transferred it then also to a subsidiary of theirs. This is the same picture that Mr. Cimento showed you, and this is the 4,000 lots, residents, 4,000 on this one, and it is not the same. Then in July, we had our what's known as the Hilton meeting when everybody showed up. And that then precipitated downsizing from the 4,000 lots that you saw on the green to the 330 that they're talking about. And then they withdrew their original PUD, the one for the 4,000. They withdrew that request. And they're going for just the plan. This is the plot with the 335 lots on the 271 acres. And you can see the future development, which has more than 270 acres of the 271. And I will stress that what you just saw as another presentation of this plan, it had the golf course. The golf course has no intention, we believe, of being built. It is just to satisfy. And then we come up, and to tell you the difference is we had a plan on March the 4th. They gave us one on March the 12th, 8 days later, And then in June is when the growth management said, okay, now you can go forward.
So the four pillars were basically under the original PUD of 2005 was a golf course community. It was mainly a way to satisfy the wastewater requirements that the partially treated wastewater could be used as irrigation water on the golf course, so it wouldn't be discharged into the intercoastal. I'm sure you're all aware that there's laws changing the discharge of partially treated water into the intercoastal waterway. It's a problem that City of Flagler Beach has to meet, as well as developments along and other communities along the intercoastal and other waterways. The other pillar, number 2, was that there was no access to John Anderson. It's already designated an inadequate roadway, if you will. It and Old Kings are the main north-south routes connecting 100 and Old Dixie. And they were designed as rural roads. And, we have this development coming in. So as part of the 2005 PUD negotiation with the GIN developers was to have no direct egress into the John Anderson highway, scenic highway, that they would do the elevated overpass, underpass. The other one was that there would be 453 maximum units total, east and west side. And then, let's see. Excuse me, I'm trying. And that 220 of the residential units would be on the east side of John Anderson. And they're increasing that again on an area that under regulations from 2011, the new standards would be considered excessive high density. We feel that this master plan fails all 4 pillars. The golf course, they say they're going to put in a golf course, but as they said themselves, plans are fluid and flexible. We all know that in the city of Palm Coast, there were issues with the Matanzas golf course. That one's been closed for a long time. The golf courses are struggling, and the one in Flagler Beach is struggling. Again, no access to John Anderson Scenic Highway. They plan on creating 2 egress points from the east side development into John Anderson. And again, on the east side, their proposed plat contains several parcels labeled quote-unquote future development. So there's going to be high-rise towers that are going to come in. It could be anything. It's an attempt to circumvent the 2005 limits on the number of residential units. I don't know. The Flagler County Comprehensive Use Plan was updated in 2011. Prohibits dense increases in density within the coastal high hazard area and special flood hazard area. Gardens project increases east side density from the 2005 PUD, even though they said that was a flexible design element. If they were to go ahead under the 2005 PUD with the increased density, that would be in violation of the 2011 Comprehensive Use Plan. But because they want to get the 2005 PUD approved, they're grandfathered in. So that's the advantage for them. The Fema Map update. The Gardens is in a special flood hazard area. We've seen no flood study. And the changes to Florida law include a quote-unquote increased awareness of environmental sensitivity and economic impacts of development. And it does not reflect that. So those are our regulation changes. We have expert opinions in statute. The Flagler County attorney strongly advised that the proposed PUD amendment deviates too greatly from the 2005 PUD. We have yet to see anything from the applicant that really refutes this, other than to say in their comments, we disagree. We're looking for the backup for that. Flagler County hired an expert consultant, Rachel Bennett, to the tune of about $6,500, who concluded that the July 2019 proposal is a completely different project, and it was. And to their credit, they did downsize it with different land uses, intensity, and distribution. We feel that this is still true with this proposal. The Florida statute, all permits issued under Chapter 163 shall be consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. The 2005 PUD is not consistent with the 2011 comprehensive plan, which is why they are seeking your approval. Our conclusion is, our position is basically to require the county and the developer to follow existing and current rules and regulations before approving this PUD application. The 2020 master plan is not a modification of the approved 2005 PUD. It is a substantial deviation from the PUD approved in 2005, and therefore should go through a new PUD application process. So it's consistent with the changes in our own code. The developer had to know this. I mean, if you think about it, a year ago, they came in with 3,996 proposed residential units on a PUD that had 453. It just boggles my mind. So as I said before, the advantage of the developer is to avoid having to go through a new PUD application and process, and to avoid having to comply with the updated comprehensive use plans. Florida statutes restrict increased density in FEMA designated coastal high hazard areas. This PUD application has a higher than current preferred density and a high flood risk area under current standards. Again, if they're grandfathered in, as we understand it, under the 2005 PUD, they can play along with the old rules. If they have to go through the new PUD process, they have to comply with current standards. Again, we are not anti-development, but we want to strongly emphasize that we feel that Palm Coast Intercoastal LLC has the time and expertise to create a community that is compliant with current standards and that will be a welcome addition to Flagler Beach and Flagler County. And we would welcome that. But we want them to go through a new PUD process. And these are experienced developers. And that's what we're looking and seeking for tonight. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just as a matter of convenience, that presentation was over 15 minutes long. Thank you, Roberto. You did a good job trying to state your facts, but I heard the same points 5 times. And
Yeah.
if everybody was out here doing 15 minutes, we're literally not going to get out here.
Yeah, I know. And that's the end of it from us.
I mean, just as a,
So-
we really need to keep this.
Absolutely. I was,
After this,
we have a clock
boom.
now. Beautiful. That was 15 minutes. We're going to keep to the time limit moving forward.
Vice Chairman, again, I'm John Tanner.
Mr. Tanner, please step up to the podium, speak into the mic, wear your mask.
I hope I have reserved the legal point that I said I wanted to make before we started, and I guess, do you want me to wait until the applicant finishes his presentation?
Can the speaker step up to the microphone closer so that the people online and on Zoom can hear him? The microphone is right there, that little, you can use that one, yes, too. There you go, that one.
Thank you. My question, Mr. Chairman, is that I had a fundamental objection to proceeding at the start, and of course, tried to reserve it. I believe I did reserve it by standing up and advising the chair that I had this. I can raise it now, or if you want to proceed and let the applicant finish his presentation and let me raise this issue. But I do want to raise it briefly, and it won't take me just a few minutes.
Just go ahead.
We filed an appeal. I believe, Mr. Mingle, you provided that to the board members.
I did, yes, sir.
Ms. Stengel, the board attorney, has a copy of it. We filed a notice of appeal pursuant to the Land Development Code, Chapter 24, and I don't believe there's any question that the request for application for the appeal met the legal standard. The code provides, and I'm in section 3.074, and this is subsection B, planning board action, that upon the filing of an appeal, all legal proceedings and furtherance of the action appealed from are stayed unless there's some danger to the public. And of course, there's no allegation of danger here. Now, when I arrived here for the hearing, Mr. Mingle gave me the application, in effect, the notice of appeal back, along with the uncashed check, because this is the original check that I sent with it. And I don't know whether that was meant to indicate that the appeal was not accepted or that he had ruled upon it. If it wasn't accepted, I think there should be at least some explanation as to why a timely filed appeal was not accepted. If Mr. Mingle ruled upon it, he is the subject of the appeal. That's a denial of due process. It would be like allowing a person charged with a crime to also be the judge.
Mr. Tanner, hold that. Counsel?
Board, the individual that evaluated the request was myself. The request was an appeal of, I believe it was worded, Mr. Mingle's determination to schedule this item for a meeting. When I reviewed the Land Development Code and the requirements for scheduling the meeting, I concluded that scheduling of this meeting was not a determination made by Mr. Mingle. The Land Development Code requires for a site development plan review that after the TRC completes its review, the Planning and Development Board shall review it. So scheduling a meeting, scheduling an item for a meeting is a procedural requirement that staff follows. It is not a determination that's being made under the Land Development Code. If it were, there would probably never be any items scheduled, because every time there was something scheduled, someone would file an appeal to stay it from moving forward to a meeting. So we responded to it, to the request, I believe Mr. Mingle did, in writing. And I also did put in a phone call to Mr. Tanner this morning. That is why we're here this evening, and that we didn't cancel the meeting or initiate the meeting and say that there was a stay. In our opinion, you don't appeal a placement of an item on an agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanner. There's your answer.
Yes.
What else you have?
A brief response. The calendaring is an administrative decision. I understand that. And setting these matters for hearing before the board may be administrative unless there's some discretion with regard to the process that precedes that. The process that precedes scheduling this type of hearing before this board goes through the TRC process, which all of you are very familiar with, and Mr. Mingle decides when the TCR process has been completed. Our position has been that the TCR process, even though he decided it was completed and forwarded to the board, has not been met or satisfied legally with regard to the issues raised in the notice of appeal. And so that's our position, is that that was a determination. In other words, there's not an automatic calendaring. There could have been 5 TCR meetings. In this case, there were 2 or 3, I guess. And Mr. Mingle is the one that decides if he's going to have another TCR meeting. That's a decision. That's not a statutory process. There's nothing in the code that says there should be 2 or 4 or 1 for that matter. Mr. Mingle makes that decision as to when TCR has been completed.
I'm going to let Mr. Langella make a comment, then Ms. Stengel.
Actually, I just wanted to reiterate, I think, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I just think as a matter of course to help satisfy Mr. Tanner's question here. Mr. Mangle, when we've had, as a matter of course, a lot of applications that came through, and all of the items on the TRC have not been addressed. It's my understanding that the applicant can decide, I'm going forward whether you people like it or not. And then if we don't like it as a board and the county commission don't like it, they can turn it down. But is it not more of the applicant's decision to go forward than it is yours?
That is correct. There is a point where there's nothing, there's nothing more to be gained from the churn in my slang, but that, you know, effectively at the applicant's discretion, they can choose to co-opt the technical review committee process and take their case forward to the planning board, the Board of County Commissioners. And as you had mentioned, we do have a fairly regular docket of items that are subject to resolution of technical review committee comments. And that's why we include the technical review committee comments and the applicant's response to those within your packets.
Thank you, Mr. Mangle.
Thank you. Ms. Stengel, if you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to clarify that with respect to TRC, the decisions are made by TRC. TRC is a group of individuals who meet and review applications. So a decision or the determination that TRC has concluded its review is made by TRC, not a determination by Adam. So that's where we are. Certainly, if there are issues that would have been raised or that were highlighted on the notice of appeal, those are issues to be discussed and raised this evening. I'm sure you will take those under consideration. And then, as Adam outlined in his report, you have 3 options tonight. You have the option to approve, to deny, or to table it and request that it go back because information is missing. So I think the arguments that were raised in that notice are not lost. They can be discussed this evening and raised during presentations and still be considered. But from a procedural perspective, our view is the notice of appeal is not applicable because there wasn't a decision made by Mr. Mingle.
Thank you, Ms. Stengel. So,
Again,
Mr. Tanner, go ahead, but let's kind of keep this going here.
In conclusion, in effect, you have the planning director whose determination was appealed, deciding that that's not an appealable issue. And that appears to be a denial of due process. You have actually a party deciding that the appeal is ill-founded.
And for the record, the party that provided the determination was me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move it along.
May I just have, just for the record, there's no question the appeal was timely filed and a check tendered, correct, Mr. Mingle?
Yes, sir. It received both the payment and the application on Friday. Yes, sir.
And those are part of the record here.
Duly noted, Mr. Tanner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Applicant, come on up. Oh.
Chairman?
Mr. O'Connor,
Yes.
did you have something to add?
My question is, procedurally, if we were to accept the appeal as properly filed, who determines the appeal under our code?
I didn't hear.
Mr. O'Connor, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, my question is, who decides the appeal under our code?
Who decides what?
The appeal.
Who
our
decides the
code.
appeal
Oh,
under our code?
You
is-
do, the planning department, the board. So you actually had this situation come up a couple of months ago where Adam had made an official determination, an interpretation of the code as to whether was it boat storage? Whether boat storage fell within a permitted use of one of the zoning categories. I don't quite remember how it worked or what the specifics were. But an appeal was filed and you held, the Planning and Development Board, evaluated that appeal. So
Do we need to do that at another meeting, or can we do that tonight?
what is it that you would like to do?
Well, I don't know what the chair is gonna ultimately decide, but I'm concerned that we have a due process issue with a party deciding that an appeal is not properly filed, rather than the governing body that would decide the appeal. We're the ones to decide. We can make a determination that the appeal was improper, but I don't know that staff can make the decision when when the appeal is based on staff not doing something correctly.
Would you like to entertain the notice of appeal?
I leave that up to the chair, but I think we leave ourselves open if we don't.
Well, you have the notice of appeal in front of you. If you would like to consider the notice of appeal.
I'm gonna let the applicant take the stand.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, it requires that application or the applicant have notice, and we've had notice. You've heard your legal counsel determine in their professional opinion that this wasn't subject to that part of the ordinance because Mr. Mengel, the planning director, did not make a decision. I think Ms. Stengel is correct.
Mr. Schmento, please on the microphone, sorry.
Pardon me?
We're missing your comments if you.
I'm sorry. I think Ms. Stengel is correct, and we talked about this because, what does the planning director decide? Well, if you look at the code, it's clear as to what it decides, and it does not decide TRC matters. It does not have the authority to approve or deny any applications that come under the code. But in fact, as Ms. Stengel properly noticed to you, that it's the TRC as a committee, section 20602, it's a committee, technical review committee, where Mr. Mengel chairs the committee. And the committee makes decisions. And in fact, the committee doesn't make any decisions at all. As Mr. Langello informed you, the committee will review applications and make recommendations to the applicant. That's all they're there to do, is to help you get through the process. They don't decide anything. They just tell you whether you're inconsistent with the code. And like Mr. Langello says, we've had plenty of applications where we disagree with TRC. But again, Mr. Mengel, the planning director, doesn't make any decisions as it relates to this appeal. So we agree with Ms. Stengel that this appeal. And Mr. Connors, I'm looking up there like you can see me, sorry. I agree. If we have some issue here, then I think if the board wants to entertain it, that this isn't consistent based upon their staff's opinion, then they can do that.
Ms. Stengel, is he accurate there on his comments?
Mr. Vice Chair, may I respond just briefly?
I want to hear from Mr. Langello first.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Connor's point, in looking in hindsight, is probably well taken. County is right now defending another lawsuit and whatever, and just to maybe we dot our T's and cross our I's, if we were to give the complainant, Mr. Tanner, obviously we would then accept his check and deposit it in, I assume, I don't know, that's up to you guys. But if we were to give him 3 minutes and give the applicant 3 minutes to just present their case, this would be a consensus. We would hear that one part and then move on, or not move on based on that decision, and because we are sort of leaving this hanging. Ms. Stengel had made a recommendation, and if she said a minute ago, this is more of our decision, then if we're to make it, then,
Make it now.
but just make some rules as to how much time we'll take. And
Why don't you, would someone like to make a motion to add the notice of appeal issue to the agenda? And then if you want to add that to the agenda, then you can go ahead and consider the merits of the notice of appeal, whether it's valid, and if so, what you care to do about it. Is that a good process for you all?
I can make a motion to amend our agenda to hear this appeal at this time.
Okay. So what we'll do then, do we have a second?
We have a second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Connor, it sounded like he voted in favor of that as well. So what we'll do is we'll hold this item 2 of this evening. We're going to hold that in abeyance pending your evaluation of the notice of appeal. So before you, you have been informed by Mr. Tanner that he has filed a notice of appeal. You have a copy of it.
Yep.
Yes. And as we described, the notice of appeal is an appeal from Mr. Mingel's determination to schedule this item for a meeting. And then the notice of appeal goes on to explain what the basis of that is. And I believe Mr. Tanner also discussed earlier what the basis of that request was. So with that background, go ahead and proceed with
Mr.
considering
Chairman?
this item.
Could we agree on a rule? I don't know if Mr. Tanner and Mr. Schmento would agree with 3 minutes or 5 minutes each side, give them equal time, and then make a decision.
I think 3 minutes should be enough. Mr. Tanner, you okay with 3 minutes? I think we should all be fine
Yes,
with
sir,
that.
I am. May I refile it or give it back to the planning director? Here's the check and here's the original document. He gave it to me at the hearing. First time I knew it was being rejected by him. I refile it?
I mean,
It's
irrelevant right now.
It's, yeah,
But
let the
let's ju-
record reflect that the application for the notice of appeal was filed and that a check was received. Okay?
Point of order, Mr. Connor.
May I just interrupt and you can go on? I just want to also put on the record that we stipulate to the process. The applicant and Mr. Tanner stipulates to the process, so we're off and running.
No, I don't stipulate the process as we're moving right now. I do stipulate that they've accepted this and decided to accept it as an appeal. I have a point to make before we go forward. The code also requires, and I'll read subsection B of 3.0704, the planning board action. The planning board shall review the request, that's what this is, which you have now accepted, at its next regularly scheduled meeting following a 14-day period from the date the application is accepted. And there's a reason for that. These are not short issues like most questions that come before this body. This is heavy-duty legal stuff that lawyers have trouble with, and normal people are smarter than lawyers, and they have trouble with it. And that's why the code provides that there has to be a 14-day period after the appeal is filed, at least a minimum 14 days for the parties on both sides to prepare not only the appellate argument, but the response. And that gives both parties a chance and gives both parties due process of law. This code is very well written, but it requires adherence to due process. And part of the code clearly says there is a 14-day grace period in effect after it's filed. And I presume that's to give the parties on both sides, because Mr. Schmento just got it in the last day or two, both sides to prepare their arguments and really advise the board properly. You're getting kind of half a package if you get 3 minutes and then everybody goes their way. It's just setting this process up for appeal to the Board of County Commissioners, and we don't need to waste their time or yours with that type process. So I urge you to follow the code.
Could you cite the actual section and chapter that you're talking about?
Yes, sir. You want me to quote the section?
No, I don't want you, just want to know what section, what's the number?
Oh, the number is 3.0704 sub B. Says planning board action. The planning board
Okay,
shall.
hold it, 3.07 point.
0.04, and then sub B, planning board action. That's after the,
Hold on one second, please.
it's the appeals procedure.
Is that the appeal of a decision already made? Ms. Mangle? Sangle?
Just to clarify, what I understood you to say is that you wanted to evaluate whether or not this was a valid
Right,
notice of
Right.
appeal, whether this
right.
was
But he's quoting a section that has to do with a decision already made.
Well, correct. So what he's quoting is the basis for his appeal.
Right.
Which is
another.
an appeal of when the planning director makes a determination, then these
Right.
various issues kick in. So the issue is this an appeal of a planning director's determination?
Right.
Which is what I thought, Mr. Connor, and what you had wanted to take a look at.
Yeah, I just
before
wanted to
proceeding.
know what he was
No,
quoting.
I know,
'cause
I
he's
know, I
up there
just-
quoting something, and I wanted to see it, and that's what I thought it was. Okay.
Further down in sub 2, under B, it says, "The appeal stays all legal proceedings in furtherance of the action appealed." This is legal proceedings in furtherance of the action appealed.
Mr. Chimento?
Very good. I appreciate the 3 minutes, and we'll get through this. I agree with Ms. Stengel that this is not a decision on the appeal. I think what you're determining is whether there was action by the director to qualify as an appeal. Very different. And, you know, it's quite obvious what we're doing here. When the appeal is filed the day before, we've been the county's been working with Mr. Tanner for a good 6 months. And in fact, I'd put Mr. Mangle on the spot, and if you ask him what did Mr. Tanner tell him was the motivation of filing his appeal, he can answer that or not. I think we all know what it is. But again, the reason that you wanted to hear this is whether the action, if there was any action by the planning director, qualifies as appeal. If you decide, no, that wasn't director action, so your appeal was properly rejected, we can do that. If you do, then, you know, and even as Mr. Tanner said, he'll appeal it to the county commission. Okay?
Thank you. All right.
May I ask a question? Do we need to have public comment on that?
Well, we're going to continue public comment. That's kind of where we are right now.
Well, the public comment would be on a different issue.
Correct. I want the public comment on what the application is.
Well,
For.
before you now is the issue of the notice of appeal. So if you
Okay.
would like to entertain public comment, it sounds as if Mr. Connor would like to entertain public comment, so go ahead.
All right, so we'll do public comment on the appeal. Please step up, state your name, where you're from. You have 3 minutes. Can we have a clock?
Yeah.
Clock.
I'm sorry, sir, if you could repeat that at the microphone, please, sir.
4159 Sonora Lane, Ormond Beach, Jeff Lindstrom. Can everybody understand me?
Yep.
Evidently, attorneys are granted unlimited time, whereas the citizens who live here are given very little time. I watched from back there. You've all made up your decisions already. That's not fair. You guys live here too. We live here. Do you have any idea the size of the risk reward to a project of this magnitude? Do you know that it could put Flagler on the map? It's wonderful. Good, thoughtful development is wonderful for businesses. I'm all over that. It also has a potential, without knowing, to destroy the area. It's that large. I'm not saying it will. I'm not anxious to be sued. I'm saying it has a potential. So while you're falling asleep, rolling your eyes, laying back in the chair, reading, while concerned citizens who have spent hundreds of hours researching this and giving you an excellent presentation, get chopped off at the knees. But the attorneys can come up at will. To me, attorneys, listening to attorneys is like watching paint dry, for God's sakes. I know what goes on here, but I don't like to see everybody that looks like they've already made their determination. This is a very, very important situation here. It could have the potential, possibly, of ruining, okay? Look, in the baggy and whip days, I got a graduate degree in urban planning and public policy. That's when we rode horses into town. I reserve the right to be a crotchety old man. So if anybody takes this personally, please don't. But I'm very concerned about this. We need to cross more Ts, we need to dot more Is, for God's sakes. I don't think Floridians, I've only been here, this is my 5th year, all right? I came here because I love this place. I love it. I want to keep it that way. This development may do wonders. Then again, maybe not, okay? All I'm saying is we all work here, right? I mean, we all live here. So to the people, the citizens that live here, please be polite, thank them. As far as the attorneys, thank them too. It's good. In my 10 minutes, I'll say, and I appreciate you guys volunteering. I know you're volunteers. I know you're experts in development and project management and so forth. Your expertise is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment on the appeal? No more public comment. Rebuttal. Mr. Langelo.
Okay, again, the process of the appeal, I read the appeal before the meeting started, and it was, as Ms. Stengel said, was about a decision that Adam made. And this section he's quoting this is not applicable, in my opinion, to why he's saying we need to wait 14 days. I think that his appeal was not valid, and that we should continue the meeting. I think that the planning director was not making this decision, and this is a process that goes on for everybody, and this was not some unique situation.
So do we have a motion to move on?
I make a motion. I agree with everything that Mr. Langelo said and everything that Ms. Stengel said, and I make a motion to deny the appeal.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the motion be denied. Any further discussion? So let's go ahead and move on. Let's call it to a vote. If there's nothing new to discussion, we're ready to vote. For those in favor to deny the appeal, to deny the appeal, say yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. We have 6 yays, none opposed. So we're going to go ahead and move forward.
Point of order, Mr. Vice Chair. I think at this point, we got to open it back on public comments for
Right.
the item we had previously on the agenda.
So we're going to open it up, public comment for the application of 3209. There's more public comment. Please step up to the podium.
Good evening. My name's Teresa Sufer. I live on Palm Drive. And literally, my home, my backyard lines up with the property that we're talking about. And all along, I was very concerned about what was going to happen to the beautiful spot we live in. I do not live on the river, I live across. But last year, the river came up and met my home during a hurricane. But it's not only during hurricanes that our block floods. And I'm really concerned that the information about flooding on my block in particular, who I've lived there for 30 years, hasn't been addressed with the amount of homes that are literally going to be on the river adjacent to my property. I feel like we're going to be flooding all the time. And I wish that someone would come down there just after a rain today, waiting to come here. We had a little rainstorm, and the water behind my house came up over the embank and was flooding my yard just from rain. What's going to happen when all of that property has concrete and walls? Where is the river water going to go? It's going to come on Palm Drive, and it's going to flood all the way down. I'm passionate about my neighbors and my block and Flagler. I think that what's coming could be really pretty and nice, but it's got to be planned to protect the people that already live here. And I'm one of them, and I am so close, I will almost be able to throw a rock to the first house that's going to be built. So please, someone address that flood issue with great concern. Come down to our block on high tide, when a hurricane is coming, and just after a rainstorm, and see my property already with water on it. I was spared by 1/4 of an 1/8 of an inch during that hurricane. It was coming into my home. And when I went down to see the people that were flooded, it was the saddest sight I'd ever seen. So hopefully the people who live there will have a little consideration about this flood issue. I can't beg you enough to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Barbara Revels, Flagler Beach. My comments relate directly to the previous speaker you just heard. At issue is what this development will be designed for by their civil engineer, Parker Mitchenberg. He will be able to stand up here and tell you that none of their water will flood that lady's home. They're going to control that water. They're going to move it here, fill it here, dump overflows into the intracoastal. They will manage that water, and he will have a design that will prove that to you. But in order to do that, he's going to do similar to what they did right down the road on John Anderson in a development called Bulow Shores, Seaside Landings. It's got several names now. And they took a gorgeous piece of property, bulldozed most of the oak trees to create a massive, massive moat area to store water in, another massive area that's a lake, put the roads in on 5 feet of fill. Every house has got to be higher than the road, so that's 6, 7 feet of fill. Nothing will grow there. It's insane, and that is exactly what will have to happen on this property in order to do the development, in order for them to comply so that their lots will not flood, so that their water is maintained in certain areas. There will be nothing left, absolutely nothing left. And I defy you to say that that's good development. I'm ashamed to say, as chairman of the Flagler County Commission, my name is on that plat on John Anderson. I was the chair when that plat came through. Sat on the planning board before that and reviewed it. I mean, it's just, you sit there and you think you're relying on your staff, your engineers, your planning people, and then something gets put in place and it's very poorly done. Don't let that happen this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Nitubik, and I live at 112 Pine Tree Street, Flagler Beach, which is right off in Palm Drive. I live on a side street that has a canal that goes down into the wetlands. During the hurricane in 2017, I had over 4 inches of water in my house. And now, with the rains that we have, the canal is higher. My street floods because it can't drain down. When it moves down, there's no drainage, so water just piles up and cars just have to go through, and it stays that way for days and days. I am asking you to please think about this, because I lost everything I had in 2017. I lost my furniture, I lost my dog. My mother lived down the end on Palm. Her house, the water got right up to it. And because of the stress and everything, I ended up losing her. She passed away. So I'm not against development, but please think about what you're doing. You fill it in, fill water does not soak down. If you fill it in, and she's correct, Teresa is correct, the water comes all the way back. And when it comes down the canal and it goes to the wetlands, it goes around, and there's a dirt road back there. And the water comes down, it just fills up, and it just floats right down the street. So my street is flooded most of the time, even with the rains. So I just ask you to please really think about, and I'm like Teresa, you need to come when we have hard rains and see all the water standing in the roads and the water that comes up behind the houses and how high it comes up now. So I just asked you to please think about what you are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Wayne Peters. I live at 421 Palm. The map that y'all just had up on there, if y'all would pull that up. If you would look at the bottom of the picture here, yes, right there, the cul-de-sac, that's where we all live currently. I've been here 20 years. The lots right next to me are the two vacant lots that are currently vacant right now, as you can see. I'm on the Intercoastal. I'm the last house on the Intercoastal. Good earth shot right there. Hurricane Irma, when it came through, I had Intercoastal Road 7.5 feet. My dock was demolished. My boat got crushed up into it. The water came from the Intercoastal side, and where Teresa lives opposite of me, and where all the other neighbors live opposite of me over here on Palm Drive. The marsh that we're all talking about to the west side, right there, yes. That water came in so rapidly. My son and neighbor Ken and all, we were out here kayaking in 18 inches of water on Palm Drive. All these neighbors that you see were flooded. And in just north where Loretta and Sandra them live, just north of Palm Drive, where the big dip comes right down where you're moving it to, there's a little park there for the children right there. What used to be a park. When that Intercoastal rose, my neighbors all there have 4 feet of water in their homes, not 4 inches, 4 feet. So my concerns is being here for 20 years, moving down from Jacksonville. It's a great area, it's quiet, why I chose the Palm Drive instead of living on Lambert. Didn't want to smell the styrene from Sea Ray. But the cul-de-sac is a dream. We have a lot of people that come and look and search. And being down here on the end, it's great. All I ask that y'all look at is on the development side, I understand there's like only a small 50-foot buffer, if I understand right, from the proposed developer to the 2 vacant lots and my neighbors that live right here on that picture. 50 feet is only about the width of that one area of the wall. So there's not much there. As Teresa and Sandra brought up, I was smart when I built my house, being a Floridian. I built my house higher than most people on that street, but I was very close. My driveway was underwater as well. But the point is, development is great as long as it's managed and done correctly. I just wish that y'all could give us, current residents and taxpayer dollars, to have a bigger buffer between this development and come back so we don't walk out on our cul-de-sac and look and see or hear all those homes that will be eventually there. That's all I ask. Just consider that and looking at the height on that. That's all I ask. If y'all can put an outlet to help us funnel the water back in Intercoastal, that would be ideal. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sally Arnoff again, Flagler Beach. Real quick, what has not been mentioned, and Adam, if you could put that picture back up again. The retention areas, the marsh area behind these houses at Palm Drive that they're talking about flooding when it just rains, that connects directly to, and do you want to point to the bottom part of that? That is the property and the retention areas that will collect more water from this development and flood that even more. I just wanted to point out that they are directly connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name's Ken Bryan. I live on Palm Drive. These are all of my neighbors. I'm sure you guys know me. I'm going to reiterate exactly what they're saying. My house is right in the same area. I have a new house. It's 4 years old. It's built to new code. Guess what? My whole driveway flooded. And the point that we're making here is that I think these developers are going to have to be very, very astute as to how they actually cause the runoff to run down on Palm Drive, because right behind my house, within about 50 feet, is this runoff area. And even now, today, yesterday, when it comes to high tide, it comes up to the berm and almost comes over to the back of my yard. And I'm in new construction where it's high. It's very, very sad to see that with the high coast area that we're considering and talking about here, that's going to have to be taken into consideration, because when you do put a lot of asphalt and concrete in new homes, you don't have the pervious ground that the water is going to drain into. It's obviously going to go behind the houses. It's going to come down. It's going to flood Lambert as well as Palm Drive. So you do have a lot of concern here, and I'm not against development, but right here in the same area, we're all looking out on our own property and looking at what's going to possibly happen to us. If we can see a developer that's going to take that into consideration and assure us that our properties aren't going to get flooded, I think you have a lot more consensus here and agreement with what they're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robin Pauletta again. Oh, sorry about that. I just want to reiterate what we were saying in our presentation. The 2005 PUD should be vacated. They should apply through a new PUD process that would comply with current updated standards. That would do a lot to mitigate the concerns of flooding and density along the intercoastal property on the east side of John Anderson. Being grandfathered in, that's less of a concern. And I think you're setting up a poor precedent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jane Mealy, Chair of the Flagler Beach Commission. I just want to point out you got a revision to the letter from our city manager as to our ability to provide utilities. And because of some comment I think that Mr. Chimento made, I want to make it clear we can provide utilities with the 353 homes. If there's a phase 2 or a phase 3, we're not so sure. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that. When we make when Mr. Newsom comments that we can provide utilities, it's for the plan as is now. Just want to make that clear. And yes, we're putting in additional wells if somebody wants to bring that up, but they're only to spread out the use of the wells we currently have. And they've been in our plans for years. It has nothing to do with the gardens at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jim Paytas with Paytas Homes, 2768 South Peninsula Drive. I'm here to speak on behalf of the developer. I work with them currently, and just wanted to make the point that they're a class act. I worked with a lot of builders, or a lot of developers. I'm a developer myself. Been doing this for 30 years, and they're top of the stack. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
My name is Ken McAleer. I'm another Palm Drive resident, second house to the end. And I think, the concern about flooding can't be underestimated. I mean, Irma was a real eye-opener for everybody. And now with the density of construction there along the east side, going from, 200 up to 300 homes, it's going to be, a bigger question. But And I think that really needs to be looked into quite a bit more than it seems maybe it has. And the other issue I'd bring up is, there was a reason they came up with the upgrades to codes in 2011. And perhaps we shouldn't try and overlook that, even though maybe something's grandfathered. And beyond that then is the John Anderson traffic issue. So the original PUD, it sounds like, had an overpass planned. And I guess there was probably a reason for that too. And now we're having more and more population, more homes being built along there. And we had more, entrances and exits on a road that really doesn't seem like it's capable of handling that volume of traffic and may need to be upgraded to some degree. I'm not sure if any consideration's gone into that. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask, Carlos, do we have anybody who's raising their hand on Zoom?
We do.
The board's ready. We'll have some comments through Zoom if.
First one up is a name of Carol. Carol, if you would unmute your. Can you hear us? Hello? All right. While she's getting that, I'm going to allow Natalie.
Hi, I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep. State your name for the record and where you're from.
Natalie Plipsack. I live at 3876 Dorsier Ave in Port Orange. So I would just like to add that there's a petition that I started circling around in Ormond Beach right now. The petition has over 59,000 signatures. Many of these people live in Flagler themselves. This petition is about the scenic loop and trail in Ormond Beach. One of the major concerns on the petition is traffic and how it will affect the Ormond Beach loop. So I would just like you guys to, if you can, please consider how you're going to control traffic coming from your county, either by limiting road access or redirecting it away from the Ormond Beach loop near Tomoka State Park. There are 59,000 people backing up the protection of the Ormond Beach loop. And the development there, I would also like to add, has a 175-foot buffer. So that's just a little bit of food for thought about how you're going to redirect traffic. And it would really be sad if this petition saved part of the loop in Ormond Beach, but then ultimately the traffic there was also impacted from Flagler itself. So I just wanted to add that in.
Okay, thank you. Carol, I don't have a last name for you. Were you able to fix your microphone? Let me try to send a... Carol, are you there? Okay, those are the only two individuals that have clicked on the raise hand to speak. And wait, we have one more. Robert Rothman.
Thank you. Robert Rothman, 17 Beulah Wood Circle, Flagler Beach. My wife and I have lived here for 30 years. And what everyone keeps talking about, and you all live in this area, is that each year the flooding gets worse and worse and worse. We lived here for 30 years and been through 5, 7 hurricanes, tropical storms, and Irma, we have a river flowing under our house. First time ever. Another 6 inches higher and we would have lost everything. So when this PUD was first proposed a decade ago, the world was different than it is now. And The fact is, we're getting more and more severe flooding every year. And what everyone's talking about, and we're begging you to recognize this, is to reevaluate this massive project and look at the Bulow Landings and or Shore, whatever it's called, down the street from us. That's an utter disaster. And say, if you're going to do a development, it's got to be on the minimal side, not on the maximal side. So anyway, things are getting worse every year in terms of flooding, so you have to factor that into any decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Next, we have Pat Ferrero. I'm going to click on her. One moment. Pat, are you there?
Can you hear me, Carlos? Oh, no.
Yeah. Hang on. Okay, there we go. Pat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, Carlos?
Yes, go right ahead. Thank you. State your name for the record and where you're at.
I'm Pat Ferraro. I live at 208 John Anderson Highway. First of all, let me thank the planning board for having this opportunity. I've been with you with the county and all these meetings back since the infamous Hilton Hotel. I moved to Flagler Beach in 1984, 36 years ago. So I've been through the 205 PUDs and the 209s and 11s, and I've lost track of what number we're on. Adam, if I could have you put that map up, the last map you've been using, please. I'm at a disadvantage here in that I'm at home, so I'm going to have to ask you to move that closer to Route 100. So move it down. Okay, there's Route 100. And if you'll just point out to everyone on going south on 100, you'll see the last, if you zoom in a bit, it's easier to, well, if you'll see, you can see where the shopping center is over there on the left. If you go to the right of that, or east, right there, stop. That's my house right there. So that's how close I am to Route 100. Now, if you'll point out Colbert, please. Colbert Avenue, it'll go west, you have to go west, and you'll see where Colbert Avenue comes out. Right there, you're there, okay. Those are just 2 points that I'd like to make. I live at 208 John Anderson. I've lived here through all of the developments, through Guillen's attempts at a development, through the one that Barbara Rebels referred to earlier. I can't keep track of the names of it either. It's Seaside or something, I don't know. All of the development that's been going on down there. I live on the corner of John Anderson and Leslie. If you are familiar with that road, if you go down Leslie, you can see it on this map, but if you go down Leslie, there's a HUD housing development down there with in excess of, yes, that's it, in excess of 50 senior citizens. The traffic on John Anderson in the 30-some years that I've lived on the corner there, I've only lived on that corner for 20 years, on the corner of John Anderson and Leslie, and especially on John Anderson, has just been exacerbated by all the development and all of the additional housing. Those senior citizens, I can tell you that I can't count how many accidents we've had. Now, I'm not saying that it's the people on 100's fault or the people on Leslie's fault, but I can tell you that I've had 3 accidents. One came into my house, one mowed down my citrus trees, and a third one, the lady was trapped in her car and her front wheels were spinning, and this was after she had hit a truck, 2 trucks that were parked on the east side of John Anderson. So we have a lot of traffic on John Anderson, and without the gardens even being attempted yet, but with all the other development that's being done with Seaside down there, I ask any of you to come and look at the traffic on John Anderson. Now, when this first PUD came out in 2005, I didn't like the idea because I love Flagler and I've lived here, like I said, for 36 years. But I figured an overpass over John Anderson and a bypass that went around to Colbert, at least that would mitigate the problems on John Anderson. And I also know that John Anderson, which by the way has just been resurfaced within the last 3 years, that resurfacing has raised the level of John Anderson. And I now I now sandbag my front door whenever, and I'm 40 feet off of John Anderson, whenever there's a hard rain. So I could certainly empathize with the people on Palm. So there's not only a water problem, but it's a horrendous traffic problem. When I brought this up, where I brought it up at 2 last meetings, the answer is, oh, the people that come out of John Anderson, they can just go down the other way and get on I-95 at Old Dixie Highway. Well, that may be one solution, but John Anderson is 2-lane. I am part of the loop, 50 people that have signed for the loop. I'm not against this development. I have come to peace with the fact that there's going to be 300 odd houses that are going to be sensibly developed, and that the drainage and the runoff is going to be sensibly handled. But the traffic on John Anderson is not adequate for, as Mr. Shimento completely insisted on saying, 2 egress points now. Well, those 2 egress points still come out on John Anderson. If we're going to live and die by the 205 PUD, then we better revisit the bypass and exit onto Colbert, where there's already a traffic light, by the way, at Colbert and 100. We may have a traffic light at John Anderson and 100, but we're also feeding a CVS, a Publix, a strip shopping center, and commercial development on the east, on the southeast corner. We do not need more traffic on a 2-lane road that is not set for any kind of development or widening in the near to distant future. John, I'm fine if you want to go with the 300 and some houses, but go back to your overpass. Otherwise, it's going to be an impossible situation and right now with the traffic, I mean, it's just cement trucks and dirt trucks and trusses and everything feeding the development that's going in now, and we haven't even started the gardens. I can't even imagine what it is. I've moved to Flagler Beach because I love this area. I've seen a lot of development. I've seen a lot of commissions that sat through the development of Palm Coast and everything else that's gone. I'm hoping that this planning board and our commission can at least get to a new PUD development that takes into consideration the flood issues, the Bulow Creek issue, and the traffic issue on John Anderson. I think I'm at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who's laughing? I'm sorry, I don't see that. With your masks, I can't tell who's laughing.
Yeah, we can't either. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate you.
Was that a laugh of approval or a laugh of I'm glad she's done talking?
We gave you a little extra time there. I'm sorry about that. And for the benefit of,
But I only went from when I saw the timer.
I know. And I don't think the folks online can see our timer, but thank you all for your indulgence.
Any more public
Thank you,
comment?
ma'am.
Zoom public
Miss
comment?
Carol, were you able to fix your microphone there, and were you still wanting to talk? And if anybody else is on Zoom that wishes to talk, please click on the little raise hand button there. Okay. Let me try to do this. Miss Carol raised her hand again. I'm going to promote her. And I apologize, all I see is a first name. Carol, are you there? All right. She's everything's okay on our end, so I'm assuming there must be an issue on her end. The only other raised hand, I believe, is Miss Pat, but I believe that was from before. Let me lower that. There is one phone call here. I don't believe they have the capability of raising their hand, so I'm going to bring them on just to ask them if they had a public comment that they wanted to make. The person who is calling in on your phone? Nope, I think we're all set, Chair.
Thank you. All right, moving forward, I guess we have no more public comment in-house here, no more public comment on the Zoom or telephones. I'd like to call the applicant back up to have an opportunity to speak.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair, or Vice Chair. I appreciate that. Trying to keep this nice and organized. Clearly, there's two issues that need to be addressed by our team, and that's flooding, obviously, and some of the traffic comments. But let's go back to why we're here. This is an application to determine if the plan that we put forth is consistent with the concept plan. The things that they bring up are legitimate. Those are technical issues that we can discuss. But that's the second step, which is the next application, which is the preliminary plat about drainage and things like that. So the question you have today is whether this plan is consistent with the concept plan and the PUD. So remember, though, that back in 2005, and I know all of you have seen PUDs come through, that there's traffic studies and flooding studies and bugs and bunny studies. So those things were addressed in the preliminary, what I'll say, 30,000-foot stage, which is the concept plan that's attached. Now we're moving down to the next level. We're laying it out. We're getting some dimensional requirements here, and this is the plan that's in front of you. And then the next application that you have is the details of how big your ponds are, where your pipes and all your inlets. That's the preliminary plat for an engineering. So before we talk about flooding and traffic, there were a couple of comments that I thought were important to this application, and that was the 4 pillars that the group brought up. Golf course community. Yes, this is a golf course community. If you read the PUD in the section, it talks about what can be developed in the area. Adam, can I go to the concept plan? The PUD plan? No, the one on the PUD, the one that we're comparing against. Thank you. No, that's the old.
I have your
Did not
concept plan,
PowerPoint.
your concept plan you have on your.
Right. It's on my PowerPoint if you could find that. So anyway, we'll keep going while he finds that. So in the pod that we talked about that had the golf course community, general project description, it talks about in that area that we're putting the 332. It says in that area, right, correct, thank you. It says in the golf course area, residential golf course community may be developed with a maximum of 453 units with supporting recreational facilities, including golf course and associated. So we've had discussions with the county as to whether a golf course is required. I know it was Ginn's intent to build one. Without arguing the point, the golf course is required. We're not challenging that. All we're saying is that this golf course will be in future phases as we do it. So this plan doesn't have the golf course. It has it laid out, so it is consistent with the conceptual plan that you have. They talked about traffic. See the PUD. The traffic was discussed in detail back in the day, and I'm not sure who did the traffic study, but in any PUD, you have to do an analysis as to whether your roads and your turn signals fail or your turns fail. So in the PUD that was debated many times, let's talk about access on John Anderson and Colbert Lane, section 5.5, as to whether this plan is consistent with the concept plan. It says the developer may also provide below-grade or aerial crossings over John Anderson Highway for internalization, circulation of traffic and services, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on to say, and they may do this without an amendment to this agreement or conceptual plan. So the developer clearly had the ability to do it without going back and amending the concept plan. It also says, remember, the developer may provide. It doesn't say shall provide. So back in 2005, if you read the record, it was discussed. People, in fact, Mrs. Tanner herself brought up and proposed to the county commission at that time that we should mandate it, and the county commission chose to go in a different direction, and they adopted the agreement that says they may provide. So an at-grade or above-grade crossing or below-grade crossing is unequivocally not required in the PUD. So we'll get back to the traffic and how it impacts John Anderson, which is a requirement. The 453, the density stuff. So there was some suggestion that by adding or changing the density allocation to the left side, the west side, the right side somehow violates the comprehensive plan. I think your staff and Ms. Revels and I have had those conversations that nothing in the PUD limits as to whether you do 451 units on one side and 2 on the other, or vice versa. In fact, because of the discussions ongoing with the community about whether the west side could be purchased for preservation, I think it bodes well to that we add these units to the side, or not even add, but elect to choose to put those units over there. So again, the PUD does not limit, does not require any units on either side. And the last thing that was brought up in the 4 pillars is the 220 on the east side. And that goes back to the point that I think caused a lot of confusion to the community, including your legal staff, up until March. The plan that they were looking at was the GIN 2006 plan, which was the Plat, that laid out all the golf course, laid out all the lots, all the commercial. That's not the plan that you're judging against. You're judging against the concept plan attached in the PUD, which just basically says you can do 453 in this big area on the east and west side of the road. So other than those things, I don't know of anything else that was even challenging the consistency of this plan with the concept plan in the PUD. What was discussed is flooding and traffic. So if you're interested in getting some responses about flooding and what is done and what needs to be done, Parker Mitchelberg is here, and as it relates to traffic, Sans Lassiter is here. So if you want answers to those questions with staff, we're here to address them.
Thank you very much.
Questions for the applicant, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Corbett?
Can we ask the applicant questions at this point?
Go right ahead.
Yes, sir.
So golf course, both sides of the road, or one or the other, or is it to be determined?
The layout of the golf course?
Yeah.
Right now, we're showing that the golf course is on both sides of the road. We haven't designed the golf course. There's an obligation to provide the golf course according to staff. And so again, it's there, and we're not arguing that it's not.
Based on what I looked at, I would presume it would be on one side or the other, or how would you get golf carts? You don't want to drive them across John Anderson, I wouldn't think.
Well, and that's what Ginn had done. They had put golf course on both sides, and they were intending to build the golf cart overpass.
Overpass, but
Right.
there's no overpass here.
Well, we don't have a built, constructed golf course, and I remind you to look back.
That could be in a future plan then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have another question. On the number of homes, the increase on the east side from what was the original plan till now, the number of sites, was that done by just adding more sites or a change of lot size or a combination thereof?
Okay. I'll go back to, maybe I wasn't clear. Adam, if you can put the general plan, the approved concept plan. Yes, sir. Remember that the residential, the 453 units in the PUD can go on all that land on both sides.
Right.
There was no requirement. Ginn's plan that, in the site that we're at, the position we're at right now, was just their detailed plan of what they wanted to do. This is what we want to do. So our plan is consistent with this drawing, because this drawing does not, nor the PUD, have any requirements to limit or maximize units on either the east side or west side of the road. As for the lot sizes, we're consistent with the PUD plan, as Adam had said.
Before the board has any more questions to the applicant, I want to close public comments first, so we don't get confused here. Do we have any more public comments? We have one more. I mean, you've been here, you've been up twice already.
And
What do we-
Chair,
what-
there is, Pat had raised her hand again, but that's, your discretion.
I
This
appreciate
is,
you.
this is your last visit to the podium.
I'm the researcher. I have all the facts and information, and that is why it falls to me to clarify points. Mr. Scimmento has been cherry picking. If he would put in context the statement about the overpass, that statement includes, the rest of the sentence says, you shall have the intersection at Colbert. So the main backbone going through and coming out and taking the traffic to Colbert is a shall do.
Thank you very much. Shimento, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I'll read it exactly what it says. Access to the project shall be provided from the following public ways as generally depicted in the concept plan, State Road 100 and John Anderson Highway. So yes, the project will have, we know and we agree, that access will be from Colbert Lane when we develop the west side of the road.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, there's context and we need to read the actual agreement. And so access, as depicted on the conceptual plan, will be from State Road 100 and John Anderson Highway. That's what it's, I mean, you can read it, so that's the answer to that question, sir.
Thank you. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. And we're going to take it over to the board for our discussions. I'm sure we have some questions for the applicant, most likely, and then move forward with a motion, hopefully. So, Mr. Langello, go ahead.
Okay. You know, I appreciate people coming out tonight, and I've been in your shoes sitting on the other side of a table. So, and there were some very thoughtful and all very respectful comments. So thank you very much for that. I made a whole bunch of notes because I couldn't remember everything. I'm trying to keep on track. Mr. Shimento is correct when he was stating we have two issues tonight, okay? We have two agenda items. One is a site plan, which is addressing some of the concerns I heard. And the other thing is the PUD, the amendment of it. So we just need to try to separate those. You're all going to get another crack at it if you stick around some of the issues you talked about. But on the PUD, I think that's where I just want to get into some of the questions. I wanted to challenge what Mr. Shimento said about the golf course. And Adam, what is the staff's stance on the golf course? Is it required, A? And B, if it is required, is there any sort of performance bond or anything like that that's required, that makes that requirement happen?
The stance that I had was that, yes, the golf course was required because it had the role, if nothing else, of being the receiver of treated wastewater. And I thought that was a public benefit that, while it may not have been discussed as part of the 2005 discussion, by the time the 2006 iteration came forward, I think it was fairly well documented in the minutes and the consideration of that capacity. The golf course gave a place for treated wastewater to go. And so I absent any other options there, you know, and I've pulled up the language here that describes the approved uses, and you know, and I'll emphasize, I suppose, even the degree that you see this description that follows in the 2005 ordinance, where the lands were described as the residential / golf, I think is how it referred to it. And so I think all of that, there you go, residential / golf community. You know, I think we looked at that as saying it was an integrated part of this PUD, and I guess the short answer back from what Mr. Shimento has said is that they're conceding that that's something they're incorporating into their design.
So is there any order which the golf course has to be made? And, you know, we talked about this at one time in another item. A couple of years ago, I remember somebody wanted to do something. They did one part of it, and what was going to make them do the second part? So do we have I mean, it wasn't spelled out in the PUD. Do we have any type of thing in our code that would require an element of a PUD to be done that we would have to impose upon him?
The only part that's mentioned here, and I did put it in the staff report, is that, you know, we expect each phase then to stand on its own, and inclusive then of whatever amenities are included within the geographic boundaries of that phase. And so the quick answer I have back for you is that the golf course, those golf course holes that are then part of that individual sector, that phase that's coming in, would be part of the bonded infrastructure to be included and developed within that phase.
Okay,
And so
so
that's
it
our
is in that.
expectation. No specific golf course completion bond, though, but as those phases come in, and I understand that I would expect that it to be that progression. You don't expect to have 18 holes immediately available. There won't
Right.
be a need for that. But then as it moves forward, that will be part of each individual subdivision's development.
But you said earlier that that was part of a general reuse plan because they were going to have their own water treatment and their own water there in the original concept, right?
That was my belief, yes, sir, and that was the original concept before Flagler Beach, the utilities were even in discussion. And that was going to be the principal purpose of the golf course was to take that reuse water out of the package plant that was to be developed here and utilize it for golf course irrigation.
Okay. And Mr. Chimento, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to
No,
that.
no, generally we agree.
Okay. Another item, question for either Adam or for the applicant. Were there any lots ever sold to an individual? Was anything actually sold to anybody on this project?
I can answer that, yes, sir. There were lots that were sold with that plat, and then that's part of the delay when the unraveling of the 2012 plat. There was a fairly quick action, a request, several requests that we had for that bond to be then pulled by the county and for us to come in and complete the infrastructure, not something we wanted to do, prompted that developer then at the time to go through, I think, about a 2 or 3 year process, get those lots bought back, and they were successful to do that, enabled then the plat vacation to occur in 2012.
Okay, so the current applicant and owner has the vested rights of the original developer. They purchased that. That's their entitlements and all the rights for that. But the way I'm looking at this, we had a PUD, an agreement. It was heard publicly. The basic agreement is still very close. We have some tweaks to it. I don't know, I'm asking you, I know what the applicant will say. Is there, and this may be Mr. Engel too, is there anything that would require a new PUD versus amending a PUD, especially considering that A, people have purchased into this PUD, and two, or B, that they already, the original developer gave more than half of the land to the county. I mean, this deal was signed, sealed, and delivered in that regard. This is not just a paper deal. This deal had legs to it. County took 1,200 acres of land that we all get a benefit from, as far as conservation land and, wetland sanctuaries held aside. And people had purchased into it. So is there anything that would say that we have to do a new one versus amend?
I think there was a lot of the individuals who spoke this evening who were making the very argument that in their view, the site plan being presented is is a deviation from the concepts and the 4 pillars as they were referred to in the PUD agreement. So I mean that's some of the testimony that you heard this evening went to that very question on whether you weigh,
I'm just saying,
how
is there
you
any
weigh that.
requirement in a deal that has been done, signed, sealed, and delivered, in effect, that we wouldn't amend the PUD, we'd have to throw it out and do a new one?
I mean, that's how you evaluate a site development plan. You evaluate it based on the PUD agreement and the concept plan, and is it in tune with that agreement and that original concept plan? And I mean, that's the argument tonight. Is it
Right.
so far afield that it actually requires text changes to the PUD agreement, or is it in line with the agreement? That's your decision, really.
Okay. I had some concerns about traffic. And Mr. Chimento says that, I guess Sands Lasser is here. And if we could at least hear what the current 2020 or 19 or whenever they did the last update or whatever they did, what that is, that might be beneficial to see if
Yes, sir. Sans Lassiter, President Lassiter Transportation Group, now known as LTG. I'm a registered professional engineer. Our offices are at 1450 West Granada Boulevard in Irma Beach. We did do a full traffic study per the requirements. I'm just going to take this off for a second. We did a full traffic study for the requirements of the River Sea Transportation Planning Organization. That traffic study did assume access to John Anderson Highway. That study, using county standards, did indicate that there were improvements that need to be made. Those improvements included turn lanes to the project, as well as improvements at the intersection of 100 and John Anderson Highway. However, with those improvements installed, it does meet concurrency as defined, which is actually the purpose of the study in the first place, was to do an analysis subject to the requirements of concurrency. So there is also a retiming effort that needs to be done at the intersection of State Road 100 and you see, that's the intersection just east of the interstate, John Anderson and
I think that's Old Kings.
Okay, yeah, that is Old Kings. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's Old Kings Road. So, which is also impacted by another project in that area as well. But there is a retiming effort that will be required there. And that was pretty much the findings of our study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Can, before you keep going and you call anyone else up to the podium, does anyone have a Lysol wipe to wipe that mic off? Thank you. Just go right at it. There you go. If anyone takes their mask off to talk into the mic, we're going to have to wipe that mic off. So just so everyone knows, Mr. Langella.
Yeah. So far on the PUD side, because I will have questions definitely on the flooding and a few other issues there. The only thing I really wanted to, the last thing about that, Adam, did you also come to the same conclusion that Mr. Schmento said, that the original PUD, the 2005 agreement, does not specify where those housing is, and they could be anywhere in that?
There is a section in the agreement that, and actually I think the plan we were looking at also, that allows for I'll try to find it after I get done talking, but it allows for the shifts to be made. Okay. And so within the limits of the boundaries of the project.
Thank you. That was all my questions.
Anyone else on the board have any questions for the applicant? I do have one question for the applicant in regards to the wastewater. So the golf course was to be used for obvious wastewater movement and all. With the golf course not going in phase one, what is the plan now to move the waste? Where is it going to go? How are you going to move it? Do you have a plan for that? I'm curious about the plan for the waste.
Yes, sir. Water and wastewater, sewer. That is being handled by the city of Flagler Beach according to the interlocal agreement and water war settlement agreement. As you heard their commissioner come up and tell you. So water comes in, sewer goes out, it goes to their plant, which is just adjacent to it. As it relates to reuse, again, there is discussion about how reuse would have been used to support the golf course when it was available. In the meantime, years ago, they had gotten a permit for a well. We are actively working with the city of Flagler Beach to help them deal with their reuse water, their gray water issue. So currently, you understand that there's discharge in the intercoastal. That's all permitted by rule. And the city of Flagler Beach engineer and manager and us have been working together on coming up with a solution to handle that reuse water when they are able to deliver it to us. And what we have done is, although it's not required by the Land Development Code or the technical codes, we have already installed purple pipe throughout all our common areas into our homes. And in addition to that, we have tentatively ponds scheduled to accept some of the reuse. So we're working with Flagler Beach, so when they're able to turn the spigot and push the wastewater to us, or the reuse water, we can do that. So Parker's here to talk a little bit more about that.
Good evening, Planning Board. Parker Mitchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. I'm the design engineer on the project. Michael had it pretty correct, but with the next item, we have our homes and our roads. And what we have is a central irrigation system, as Michael mentioned, purple PVC pipe, reuse valve boxes. Initially, that system will be fired up by recycling stormwater from the on-site wet detention areas, but it's set up as soon as reuse is available, and City of Flagler Beach needs to make improvements to their plant. They currently have a secondary treatment plant that you're allowed to then discharge into the intercoastal, but you need a tertiary treatment plant with chlorination to be able to put it on either a golf course or on lots. So basically, these 6 phases that you're going to be hearing more about with the next item, we have the ability to accept just about all the reuse that the plant will produce. And we've been in discussions with the city and their consultant about on-site storage for the effluent from the plant. And we've already got the distribution set up with the construction plan. So when reuse becomes available, we'll be able to accept it and eliminate the discharge into the river, which is what everybody wants.
Thank you.
Chairman? I just want to comment on what that is. I don't know if, again, I'm familiar with this type of an issue with what the last speaker just talked about. As a benefit, actually, to all the people in the Flagler Beach system, the state had mandated that when they treat your water, there's a thing called reuse. It's water that comes out of that, all the bathroom water that's getting flushed on the toilet. They clean all the toxins out of it, and you have this water that you're not allowed to drink, but they got to do something with. At one time, they used to just dump it into the waterways of the state, but now they can't do that anymore. So this allows the city of Flagler Beach to, for free, basically get rid of that water. So that is a benefit to people when they do that. Actually, a lot of cities have been doing that, and they'll send it right down all your streets, and everyone gets the reused water. But that's actually not a negative thing; it's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Langelo. Any more comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion that we'd like to put out there?
I'd like to make a motion. I find that this application is significantly similar to the original 2005 in both the amount of homes and the impact on the community. Again, I think that this deal has already been done. It's already been, signed, sealed, and delivered. So I don't think we should need to do a new one. So I'd like to make a motion to, I think it's on that application. The first one, Adam, that was the one that had to, let's go right and make sure I'm saying the right one.
Option 1 is recommendation for approval as submitted.
As submitted. I'd like to make a motion that we accept as submitted.
We have a motion. One motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion. Adam, what's the next step? If this is approved, what's the next step? Do they come in with plans for drainage and traffic and all the other stuff that we're concerned with? What's the next step?
Next step in progression is the next agenda item. It's a preliminary plat. And so that, and not uncommon for us to have these together at these meetings. We had done this years ago. And so that as the approvals progress, you go from land use, your authorization, future land use and zoning, then forward to, in this case, the PUD site development plan, preliminary plat, and eventually final plat. And at each time, you're refining the product. Maybe I didn't answer your question as directly, but the next step then also for both of these is they go on to the Board of County Commissioners. Your recommendation will go on to the board for both of these items.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further discussion on the motions? All right, well, if there's nothing new to add to the discussion, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the application being approved, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? One opposed? Mr. O'Connor, say anything?
Yes, he said aye.
Aye. So,
Carlos, was his aye for the, in favor, or was he an aye for the opposed?
He was in favor, and if Mr. O'Connor would like to repeat himself?
Mr. Connor?
I voted aye in favor of the motion.
Thank you.
so the motion passes with 5 in favor, 1 not in favor. Excuse me? Mr. Goodman is the, so we have 5 passes, 1 fails for the application of 3209. Moving on, the application 3210, this is a quasi-judicial application. Do we have any disclosure for this, this application? I have disclosure, once again, just like the last one, I did have a conversation with the applicant and the attorney last week, purely informative discussion on this. Application 3210 is a request for approval of the preliminary plat in the PUD district for 335 lots in 6 phases in the Hammock Beach River Club PUD located south of State Road 100, east of the lying, east and west of John Anderson Highway. I'm going to turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Yes, sir. And I'm sorry, did you do the quasi-judicial disclosures?
Yes, we did.
Okay. The application location, same as before, we have on both sides of John Anderson, the future land use, city future land use, also the zoning, city zoning, flood zone again, and the soils map, same as before, along with the wetlands. And then what we have here is you have those each of the plats being prepared to the requirements that we have in Article 4 of the Land Development Code. And we've gone through several discussions on this at the Technical Review Committee. We've had iterations of staff comment on these, and so these 6 plats then come in, depict those 335 lots and that development to occur on the east side. The important emphasis here is that each phase has to stand on its own. And so that's inclusive then of access. And so where your access routes come in, if you have, and you saw a mention of that, I have to make sure I put that in the record, is the cul-de-sac length, 1,320 feet. We have a provision already in the PUD that says, you know, that waiver's already existing. Some of the things that we look for those waivers are already included in the PUD. So we're judging these plats still by their consistency with the approved PUD document. Now then also with the approved or to be approved PUD site development plan. And so you've got to have that consistency then for these. Preliminary plat, important emphasis here. This allows a developer to come in and then commence construction, because this also includes construction plan approval. Didn't have that detail for you in your packets, because that's a substantial record. We had that available for you online for those nerds, Mr. Goodman, who want to go and check that kind of stuff out, just like me, that you want to go and look and see how that stuff all works. That's out there online for you to look at. And that's all part of the approval here with this. Your recommendation then would not only be preliminary plat approval, but also is approval and recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on construction plans. Again, each of these then sit on their own merits. Article 4 consistency. Staff, as the TRC, has reviewed those. You have the comments for record, along with the applicant's rebuttal. We also had, and I believe I had included in some communication with the school board. I think I had forwarded that to you last, that there is a general discussion there that's happened, but no specific reservation of school concurrency. So worth it to mention that demonstration, we continue on this path. We have some initial discussion, but ultimate determination on concurrency, we've got to make it at final plat, no later than that. And so that's the point when I've got to have some expectation, either the water and sewer is available, or that there's a plan included within the capital improvements plan for Flagler Beach for those upgrades to happen. You know, you've got to have that school concurrency available, or that there's a mitigation plan that's been approved in order to have those student stations available for that next incoming phase that we're approving. Realizing that those rooftops in that phase are not going to happen immediately. They're going to happen over a period of time, but we cannot approve those final plats until that concurrency is in place or planned within the various plans that we have. With that bit of a preamble, again, submitting my staff report, technical staff report, and the record, balance of the record as part of the backup for this item, and wait any questions or comments from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. Now we'll have the applicant come up for their presentation.
Certainly. Michael Shimento for the applicant. This is technical stuff, so we'll answer any questions that you may have about invert elevations, slopes, setbacks, sidewalks, road design, those types of things. We have our engineer as well as our traffic engineer here and the owner himself. So anything that you all want to talk about, we can talk about. Again, the plan is consistent with the one that you just proposed as far as a two-dimensional. We're preserving the wetlands, we're providing roads, water, sewer, reuse as we discussed before. And maybe this is the time you want to talk about stormwater and flooding, and we can have Parker come up here and address you if you'd like that right now.
Yes, please.
Again, for the record, Parker Minchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. I'm a professional engineer, state of Florida. I also hold a landscape architect's license, a general contractor's license, a real estate broker's license, and am a developer, as well as have owned and operated Parker Minchenberg and Associates for 35 years in the area. I'm a 64-year resident of Volusia County, and some of the people that spoke earlier, they talked about living in Halifax Plantation. I designed all the streets in Halifax Plantation. I've got a lot of experience with riverfront development, Palm Coast Plantation, same developer, very proud of that subdivision. Ms. Revels kind of made the point that this development was going to tear all the oak trees down. So a couple things I want to point out. The Ginn PUD had a requirement for a 50-foot tree buffer along both sides of John Anderson. Our current plan increased that to 100-foot. So that's 100 foot on both sides of John Anderson, where a lot of the significant oak trees are that are going to be preserved with this plan. There was a discussion about drainage and design. I actually, about 30 years ago, my father and I bought and designed Palm Drive. So I was the developer as well as the engineer. Very proud of that. I built that first brown house as you come in, personally. And so there's a concern about the flooding of Palm Drive and other issues related to it. So we have to meet a lot of different regulations. The county has regulations, the Water Management District, and we're just about to get our St. John's permit. So this design is in concert with all the requirements. We're not going to flood the neighbors, and I attest to that, as well as your county engineer, as well as the St. John's engineer. So maybe with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Anyone yet?
I actually had a question for Adam first, if I can just, you talked about the plat. We had a plat. The plat was then abandoned. So that's why you said these final things will be taken up at plat, but that's because we're going through that process all over again. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So pre-peak, post-peak, the requirements say that you basically can't make the situation any worse than it is right now.
Yes, sir.
I know Palm Drive too, prior to when you did, I guess you're talking about the extension.
Yeah, I did the
Palm
cul-de-sac.
Drive, right, because I actually had a good buddy of mine back 40 years ago. He lived in one of the old painted block houses that still exist over there.
They're a lot lower too, by a
They
couple
are?
of feet. So when I
Yeah.
did Palm Drive, those houses are about 2 feet higher than those older houses.
That street flooded 40 years ago and probably even before that when they made it. So I'm not sure that anything we do is going to ever make their situation any better. Question is will you make it any worse? So are you also regulated by Army Corps on this one too?
Yes, we have applied and should have the Army Corps permit fairly quickly, but the Corps only regulates wetland impacts. It's the Water Management District that regulates stormwater.
So without getting too technical and taking all night, you are going to create retention ponds,
We are.
and then where will the pop-off go?
Everything eventually goes where the pre-developed condition goes to the intercoastal for this side of John Anderson.
Okay, and does that run through the Palm Drive neighborhood?
No, sir.
Okay, so the additional, because there would be, obviously, with all the impervious that you're going to be creating between the roads and the houses and driveways, you're going to be creating an additional surge of water that you're capturing in your retention. And the pop-off is going to go to another area to go back out to intercoastal.
Yes, sir. Kind of this site, and Adam had the soils map up earlier. It has, next to the intercoastal, there's a cap rock that kind of precludes drainage from right next to the intercoastal. As you get across, and there's a wetland slough, and you saw that on the wetland maps they showed. To the west of that is actually what they call A-type soil. It's water recharge. So we have dry retention between that wetland and John Anderson that will direct the stormwater to, and then that stormwater will recharge the aquifer. So the only area that's of a little more concern is where you have what they call D-type soils, and that's right next to the intercoastal. So we have to do stormwater calculations for the 25-year and 100-year event and demonstrate pre-post that we're not exceeding what they call the peak discharge, the cubic feet per second of runoff. So we're meeting all those requirements and then some.
Okay. The issues that someone talked about the golf course earlier, there'll also be, obviously, you got to do stormwater retention on the golf course when that's done too as well.
Yes. I designed the golf course drainage for Halifax Plantation. So what you do is you take it to dry retention areas so that the fertilizer, et cetera, doesn't go right into the water bodies. It goes into dry retention areas.
Are you elevating the natural ground significantly, as Ms. Revels had indicated? Are you?
What we've done with this development is attempted to balance the earthwork. So that'll minimize the amount of truck traffic that the people adjacent to the project will have to deal with. So next to the intercoastal, we're definitely filling, not the 5 or 6 feet that Ms. Rebel said, more like 3 to 4 feet. And then there's other areas we're actually cutting the roads where the lots will be higher than the street to balance the dirt work.
Are you putting in the fill in this project for all the lots? The lots are going to have the fill?
There's
The
been
project she's talking about, I agree 100%.
There's been discussion about that, and I know your question is, you don't want to come in and clear cut a couple hundred acres. So there's a balance between cutting
Actually,
some
that's
of the trees.
That's actually not my question.
Okay, go ahead.
My question had to do with the development she talked about. My business partner bought a lot in there, and then, and I sat on this board when we approved it, and I did not catch, I actually asked the question and didn't catch how the response was going to be, but the owners of the lots purchased a lot that are significantly lower than the road. They then have to bring in this fill for their lots, and then they have to deal with the fact that their neighbor's lot is lower. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on about how much you got to basically fill your neighbor's lot. It's actually kind of a quandary. It's created a lot of issues when you get down in it. So are you filling these lots to the required basic elevation, and then there's not going to be an issue, or are all these lots being created where you're putting the road in, but then all the lots are going to have to be filled in later on by each individual person?
Yeah, what we'll be doing, and I was going to answer that question earlier, so I kind of was on the same page with you. Typical subdivision, you'd come in and clear cut everything, you do all your earthwork, and all the lots would be within 6 inches of final grade for the slab. What we'd like to do here, and we did talk with the staff about this, because the staff also has experienced exactly what you said, where you've got one person filling, the lot next door is not filled, and it creates grading problems. So we're going to do hopefully a combination where a majority of the lots are going to be filled with the roadway infrastructure, but we do want to leave some tree stands to kind of screen that area for marketing purposes and to have a percentage of the trees still there prior to them all being filled. But I would say 80% of lots will be filled to grade.
So the ones that you're leaving the trees in, they're gonna have, the trees will have to come out and, because you can't bury a tree with sand, or unless you
Yeah,
make a
they'll
well.
have to take those trees down, and it's a balance again. You know, if it was a requirement to leave all the trees and then do it when you do the lot development, that's one side of the spectrum. The other would be to do all the clearing and all the earthwork, and then when the houses get built, not have any clearing needing to be done. The developer is planning on building all 6 of these phases concurrently. It's not like he's doing phase 1, then going to go to phase 2. So I think as the market dictates, as he gets into this, there'll be a balance there, but we're going to fill most of the lots, but we would like to leave some trees so it's not totally clear cut.
Okay, is that spelled out in this, Adam, in this plan here, or is that gonna be in the future, the final site plan? That actual, how they're gonna deal with the site, the filling of the lots?
The fill is part of the construction plan approval, and so a quick answer I can tell you is I think that's specified, but I'll definitely talk more with the applicant and the development engineer about that to make sure that's happening. But the amount of fill to be done by the developer is specified in the construction plans.
And when will those construction plans be approved?
I think that they are approved in concept by you this evening, and then ultimately by the board. And I can't confirm what Mr. Mitchenberg has mentioned. I believe that our discussion was correct. I can't confirm the construction plans show that fill occurring on those lots. He can talk more to that, and then I can confirm that with the development engineer tomorrow. But
Okay, so if this passes tonight, before it goes to the county commission, you will get a chance to review and at least answer that question to them. I'm hoping that if it is passed tonight, that you do address that issue and it doesn't just get lost when it goes up there. Okay.
You can
I
certainly
can help a little bit with that. The construction plans do detail all of the clearing and all of the filling. It's
Yeah, I just want to confirm,
Yep.
and not just from the applicant side, but also from staff,
Understood.
to protect the public, to make sure that we are at least addressing this fill situation that I have seen personally how it has affected the lot owners. It did not work well.
It's your preference then to get all the filling done with the infrastructure?
Personally, I'm a believer that trees grow and they die, but they do grow. So you have a big tree now. It was a little tree years ago. So, I mean, I don't think, every tree lives forever and it stays that way, and, they're not sequoias or anything. But, so I don't have a problem personally with knocking down, putting a tree in that will probably grow better than trying to preserve a tree that the terrain has changed. Some of these trees, they had other trees growing around them, and you pull the trees away from them, they look ugly, and then a windstorm comes by, they
don't do well.
So, I'm personally, my own belief, I'm just one person here, that I'd rather see, if I was doing development, you said you're gonna balance the site, get in there, get it ready to go, and then if the developer chooses to put some trees in up front, just for a visual, he can do that as well, but that's my own belief, because I've seen the problem on the other side, but that's just that side. Parker, I think that's all the questions I had.
Yes, sir.
For you. And we did talk about the traffic study, and that did say that they can, Mr. Mento did read the section that said that they can use John Anderson, and it gave them explicit permission to do that. That flyover thing did not mean that they couldn't tie into John Anderson. I am understanding that correct, right?
yes, sir. Yeah, the language that was in the PUD document had mentioned both access from State Road 100 and John Anderson, and then had a permissive may in the later on in the paragraph on access that said the developer may choose the grade separated crossing.
So there was nothing in the original agreement, again, that we're still going by, that precluded them from doing what we see on our site plan, which is these basically two intersections happening at that John Anderson.
That's correct. The PUD does allow that. The conceptual plan does have language that, and arguably is very much to the benefit of the developer.
And you did look at the traffic study, and you concur that the meeting concurrency and any impact that he was talking about that they have to do will be taken care of in that order that the county will make them do, as far as, they won't be building that intersection or that stuff now, so not doing that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we did, and we also had the methodology evaluated by an outside consultant who validated the methodology.
Okay. The part that somebody said earlier, again, I know most of the people had left because they just assumed it was over. They talked about not seeing their house, seeing other houses from their house. There is, and again, to me, the applicant is under no requirement to build a subdivision that nobody can see. But I did look at that drawing, and it looks like there's a little cul-de-sac that comes right up to the back of the property on Palm Drive. So right along the road there. Are you doing that, Parker? Is that you? Are you going to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Adam's got a good exhibit up. You can see Palm Drive down there. There currently exists a 50-foot recorded conservation easement in favor of the St. Johns River Water Management District. So what that does is that allows an outfall from the wetland, and you were on the right drawing, Adam.
If you just zoom into that bigger drawing you had on the bottom right-hand
There you
corner.
go. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you see the crosshatched area? That's actually an
50
existing
feet?
conservation easement.
That's 50 feet?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
then,
excuse me, is that wooded right now?
yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And then you can see the lot 80. It's the first lot on the intercoastal. So if you go to the upper right-hand corner there, that's maybe 80 or 90 feet from the property line to the corner of the lot. So the house would be another 5 feet. So we're looking at probably 85 to 90 feet to the property line.
Right, you have a stormwater across that on the opposite side, on the west side of that street.
Yeah,
That's what that is?
and that, you're talking about,
It'd be on the drawing, it'd be on your left-hand side of the cul-de-sac.
on the left-hand side of the cul-de-sac, actually what it is there is a wetland there. You can see the note that says wetland line typical. And so with the wetlands, we're providing a minimum 25-foot upland buffer. So that's not a stormwater area. That lot abuts a wetland. Much like Palm Harbor, the lady got up that said she didn't live on the riverfront, but she lived on the other side. Well, all those lots abut a wetland, and these lots will also abut that same wetland.
But what is that lot on the west of the cul-de-sac?
It's kind of an L-shaped lot.
That is a buildable lot?
It's a buildable lot, yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't,
Yes.
oh, now I see it, lot 81, all right. Okay.
But again, there is an existing conservation easement. You can see the OR booking page there. And that is going to be a low area. And you can see the elevations, the spot grades there, 1.4, 2.8. That provides a flow path from the wetland to the west to the intercoastal for Palm Drive as well as this subdivision.
Adam, is 50 foot a minimum, or is that a larger separation between one residential subdivision and residential housing? Is 50 foot greater than what a minimum requirement is?
We do not have a minimum requirement for buffering residential to residential.
So that's
and so
50 feet of.
Single-family residential. Yes.
Right, okay, so that's 50 feet of buffer they're getting in that neighborhood. That may not be required.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, they don't have it in their house next door, but, okay. Yeah, those are my questions on the site plan. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and, any other questions for the applicant right now? We'll go ahead and open the floor to public comment at this time.
Good evening. Paul Harrington, Flagler Beach, Florida. I wanted to speak about the wastewater reuse program. I'm very interested in that. I've been following it for a long time and have had a number of conversations with St. John's Water District. They're promoting it. They have money available. So they're really trying to get this going. I applaud the use of the water. We have 5,000 homes in Flagler Beach that are using the wastewater treatment plant. We have, according to the numbers that I've been given, about 500,000 gallons of water a day that's going into the intercoastal waterway. We got to put that on 335 homes. That's 2,000 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water. And you got to get this wastewater treatment plant up to par to build the homes. So I think that might be something that we need to have a strategy on to figure out how it's going to work, because it's not only good for Flagler Beach, but it's also good for the gardens. It's got to work. And right now, I'm not an engineer, but just doing the rough math, 2,000 gallons of water a day is a lot of water. So what else are we going to do with it? Adam mentioned something about, a couple weeks ago, you said irrigating fields to the west. Didn't really understand that comment, but we got to do something else. I'm not a proponent of a golf course. We got a lot of them. Maybe some green area or something. But I'm just throwing things out. You got to figure it out if you want to make this thing work.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment?
May I?
Absolutely.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The comment I want to make now has to do with the traffic study. And we have debated how reasonable the 2.5-mile radius from the gardens. John Anderson as a road is very unique in that it has no east-west crossovers. So if you start on John Anderson and you are going south, you are going all the way down to Walter Boardman. The road doesn't stop at Volusia County line. The road doesn't stop at the 2.5-mile. And there isn't any place for them. Normally there is, as Adam explained it, it shuttles off. As the further down you go, you lose cars. John Anderson has no place to lose cars. So all of them are going to go down, and I said, you want them just to stop and pile up and say, beam me up, Scotty? It'll dump on Walter Boardman. Walter Boardman is part of the scenic Ormond Loop. That will go over to Old Dixie, and Old Dixie is not any better either. So I have a serious problem with them saying that John Anderson can handle the traffic. Going south, it cannot handle it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment here or on Zoom?
Mr. Chair, we have a few on Zoom when you are ready.
We're ready to roll.
Ms. Pat Ferrero?
Thank you again, and I'll try not to overstep my 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever I don't see. I'm just going to dovetail to what the previous lady said. And by the way, going south, if you end up on Walter Boardman and then ultimately on Beach, in that area there, that's the park. The speed limit is 25 miles an hour through there. If there's this is what I tried to allude to before, that's a whole lot of traffic going south on John Anderson and ultimately winding through Tomoka Park and then out onto Old Dixie and then trying to get to the interstate, which was the solution that was said by the developers back at the Hilton meeting. So southwise, I find that a problem. My question is, I understand that there's been some traffic study and it's all, Adam approved it and we had a separate person in. But could I just ask a question? If these traffic studies are they taking into consideration not only the development that's being built and the equestrian development that's being built, both of those on John Anderson, but now additionally the gardens. And I still don't understand if the 05 PUD said that, they didn't, according to what I just understood from Mr. Schimento a little while ago, that they may build a crossover and go out at Colbert. It sounds to me like their mind is already made up to only have 2 egress points on John Anderson. It doesn't sound to me. What I gained from the Hilton meeting was that they were in a rush to put in a strip mall and a bunch of restaurants and stores and everything up there to make the Colbert exit feasible, and therefore the light, and they could get the overflow traffic out on Colbert, out on 100 at the Colbert. But it doesn't sound like that commercial development is high on their things to do right now. So I'm still very concerned about, and I know we have a turning lane now at 100 off of John Anderson. But like I said, there's a whole lot of commercial that already loads into those turning lanes. And I have a real hesitation about the ability going southbound on John Anderson to handle the traffic out of that development, the equestrian development, sorry, I don't remember the current name, Seaside Development or whatever it is, everything that's being built that the county's approved of south on John Anderson. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we also have Carol from earlier, who we didn't hear from, so we're going to try this again. Carol, can you hear us?
Carlos, this is Pat. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I had to make some adjustments due to your Zoom to turn the audio on my Zoom settings. That may be Carol's problem.
Okay. Carol, if you have a button, if you're on a computer, there's a join audio button if you haven't clicked that. And if you have, there's a microphone button. If you're on a phone, I believe you have to swipe either left or right across your screen to get to tap to speak. So I'm not sure how you're connecting, but those are the options on the Zoom app there. I see that you're not muted, but we're not hearing you. Anyone else?
You may still have me on it because I still have your timer screen.
Yeah. Here, Carol. Pat, I'm going to go ahead and drop you down.
That's fine.
Thank you. Chair, I believe that's all, unless Miss Carol can resolve her audio issue there.
Going once, twice. Any more public comment? Would the applicant like to step back up to talk about and?
Chair, if I may also, Ms. Carroll, there is a Q&A button, so if you can't figure it out, you can type out a question in the Q&A button of the app, and I'll make sure that the chair here gets it. I'm sorry, Chair.
Okay. We could go ahead and close public comment now and have the applicant come up.
We have Sands here, as you guys know, to talk about some of the traffic, if you want to ask questions of us. So Sands, if you want to address the issue about distribution, and then we'll be available to ask any specific questions that you may have left.
Sans Lasser again, do I need to re-give my information regarding my address?
Please.
Yes, 1450 West Granada, Suite 2, Ormond Beach, Florida, 32174. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida and president of LTG. In referencing our traffic study, we had to use the regional urban model, which is actually a huge model that we have to edit and add our land use to and run a distribution based on that model, which includes the area roadways. And what that model shows is approximately 5.6% of the traffic headed south. Majority of the traffic will be headed north, but 5.6% of the traffic headed south, and it splits a little more going over to High Bridge than going to Walter Boardman. But that traffic does split at that point. We show about 3.1% on Walter Boardman, 2.5% on High Bridge. So yes, we did run that distribution. We do understand those impacts, and we are certain that there's sufficient capacity for that amount of traffic.
Can we just step through, I guess for some people maybe, and even myself, I just want to hear the numbers. The existing traffic count, what do we have on that road right now?
Okay.
In either, both directions and whatever. At your property, what is the existing traffic count?
Okay, the 28, this was, the latest data is always a year older, so this study was done last year, so at that point it was 2018 data. It showed 1,000 trips a day on John Anderson between Trotters Lane and State Road 100.
Okay, and then what is the expected total traffic count of your project once developed? And in addition to that, the existing. So what would that bring the existing up to?
Okay, what we did is we analyzed the critical hour, which is the PM peak hour.
Right.
And in the PM peak hour, there are approximately 360 trips southbound on 100, just south, on John Anderson Highway, just south of 100. And there are approximately, I'd say, 230 northbound again, that would be on John Anderson Highway at 100. So those are the peak hour numbers of the total background traffic. Our traffic that we're adding northbound is approximately 100 trips northbound, and southbound we're adding approximately 31.
That's at peak hour?
Yes, sir, in the peak hour.
Okay, and then what is the road, what can the road handle?
The capacity for John Anderson Highway, let me see if I have that particular value here. Excuse me just a second. In the peak hour is 931. The daily volume was 1,000. So just to give you an idea.
So for the peak, let's talk about the peak, because that's what really, I'm glad you brought that number. That's really more pertinent because people at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever aren't as concerned about the couple extra cars. But, so at the peak hour, you're only at 1/3 capacity? Is that what I'm remembering your math is?
Approximately.
Approximately 1/3 capacity. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Part of your study, does it show how many, how much of the traffic heads east towards Flagler Beach opposed to west towards, say, I-95?
Yes, sir, it does. Of the 83% approaching the intersection from the south, approximately 12.5% turn east towards Flagler Beach, and the remainder of the 83%, which is close to 70, go to the west.
That's of the existing or of what you?
No, that's of the project traffic.
That would be, once the project is complete,
That's correct. That is that build out.
The Colbert, I guess I will call it the Colbert Lane road intersection that is on the PUD. That's not in the plan to cut in at this point right now.
We actually ran this analysis without this to make sure we were looking at a worst case condition, because We knew that in this initial analysis, it didn't include the commercial, the retail development. So we did a worst-case analysis, and if this was the only access for this residential development, what would be those results be? And so, yes, you're correct. We did not assume the additional analysis to Culvert.
So that culvert connection there is really the purpose for commercial, once the commercial section gets developed.
In my opinion, I think that's what the plan is, yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Any questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have the written question from Carol, if you would like to hear that.
Yes, absolutely.
Carol says, thank you. Has the TPO agreement been addressed regarding the increased traffic on the loop? We have a very small corridor, the Gardens, Plantation Oaks of the Ormond and Old Kings Road will eventually be accessing. And I'm sure you kind of covered that, but I just wanted to make sure the question got into.
So is that question for the?
Just address
We
it.
did, yeah.
And I can read it again if you need.
Yes, what we showed is that less than 2% of this traffic is headed west on Walter Boardman. Obviously, when it gets to Walter Boardman at Old Dixie, it has two directions that 3% or 2.5% would then split to, which would likely be the larger percent goes towards the interstate. So it would probably split, but it could split 50-50, and that 2.5% would got down to 1.25% of this project traffic on that roadway.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions, I imagine. We've already closed public comment. We're going to move to the board now, board discussion. Do we have any motions or any questions that we'd like to bring up?
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the condition, Adam, that my earlier comment that you check into before it goes to, on the fill, that you check into that before it goes to the county commission and address that as a, verbal item that you bring up to them, not just in the staff report.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a second, that the application be approved. Do I have to comment on the condition with this motion? All right, so in that case, if there's nothing new to add to the discussion, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the application being approved, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? I did not hear Mr. O'Connor, so I'm not sure how we want to do that.
Mr. O'Connor, can you repeat yourself again, please?
Aye.
All right, so the motion passes 6-6 for application 3210. Any staff comments?
No, sir.
At this point? Board comments? Public comments? I file a motion to adjourn.
Second. Third.
I approve. All in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
There you go, man.